Chapter 1. It was another warm day on the savanna of the Shifter Preserve, as Sylvie and her mother, Rose, headed out. They left the little hut that she slept in and headed for King Damon's hut to see what he had planned for the day. The title, King, was mostly just for show. Although Damon was clearly the leader of the Tiger Village, he was certainly not treated much differently than anyone else there when they were on their own. Sylvie had to appreciate the status of her father personally, since his title afforded her a bit better treatment than some of the other females while she was at the community center. The truth was that even though the humans believed they had created a society in which lion shifters and tiger shifters could live harmoniously and share the food sources they received, there were some very clear divisions that they seemed to conveniently overlook. Firstly, despite the fact that anywhere else in the world the lions would live on the savanna and the tigers would be in the woods, on the preserve that was completely the opposite case. It had been 80 years now since the preserve had been repurposed for shifters instead of the standard variety Asiatic lions it had once accommodated, and a good 60 since the tiger shifters had been relocated there. But in all that time, the dwellers within the tiger village had never been allowed into the forest by their lion counterparts. Instead, the tigers had been forced to create homes out on the savanna. They used grass and mud to fashion crude huts, which often fell apart again during the rainy season, and they had even fashioned a sort of fence all around their perimeter. It was more of a structure for show as well, since any lion worth his salt could have easily torn right through if he wanted inside. "Good morning, Father," said Sylvie cheerfully as the two females currently in human form, as were all the others while inside the walls, entered his hut. "Anything interesting happening today?" "Not at all, Sylvie," said the man with a shrug as he kissed Rose on the cheek. "Good morning, wife. You didn't come back to our hut last night." Sylvie and I cuddled up for a nap, but unfortunately it ended up being a much longer nap than either of us expected, Rose explained. "Only that means if we hope for any sort of meal this morning, we'll have to head over to the community center and get something instead." "Eating like a human again?" Damon complained. "I'm absolutely disgusted. I'll bet my grandfather never had such conveniences in his day and age." "Yes, Father, but your grandfather also wasn't in any position to be able to," Sylvie pointed out. "Tigers outside the preserve had a much harder time, and no doubt shifters had it even worse. After all, back then nobody knew cat shifters existed, and they were hiding among the humans or out in the wild. Here, we get to have the best of both worlds. So forgive me if I enjoy it. But after all, I'm not the kind of person who wants to live in the past." "Our people have truly grown soft," Damon sighed. "But I don't begrudge you the enjoyment of it, I suppose. Still, I am glad to see that your brother must have went out in search of food last night, though it worries me that he hasn't returned from doing so." "David hasn't come in from the savanna?" asked Rose worriedly. "I hope everything's all right. You know that the lions on patrol sometimes accost tigers even if they're not attempting to enter the woods." "As to that, David does enjoy trying to have a go at those monkeys," Sylvie smirked. "I wouldn't mind eating a monkey or two myself," Damon admitted. "But that's no reason to put myself in danger. Those lions have been known to kill and eat anyone who tries to intrude on their territory. I'd hate to find out anything bad happened to him." "Well, there are worse fates," Rose added with a grimace. "What fate could be worse than death?" Sylvie scoffed. "Dear, that's not a thing to be telling a young female about," Damon cautioned uncomfortably. "And why not?" Rose asked. "Shouldn't our daughter be aware of the dangers now that she's old enough to hunt alone? What if she's accosted by a collector herself?" "If she was accosted by a collector, the likelihood is that she'd be collected," he pointed out. "Otherwise, why bother her with it? Let her enjoy her youth just a bit longer." "What are the two of you going on about?" asked Sylvie, exasperated. "Collectors, my dear," Rose insisted. "How does one explain them? You see, Humans sometimes come here to capture shifters and sell them to wealthy people. The borders have become more and more heavily manned to keep them out, but still, one never knows. You mean rich humans collect shifters? Sylvie gasped with disgust. But why would they do that? What do they even want us for? Now that much I'd rather you didn't mention, dear, Damon insisted. Suffice it to say, they put them to work on whatever tasks they might desire them to do. Sylvie stared at him, aghast. I probably would rather not know, then. Well, Mother, were we going to the community center or not? I'm a big girl, and my stomach is growling. I'm more than ready to eat. Yes, daughter, go on and enjoy yourself, Damon chuckles. It pleases me greatly to see you well-fed and rosy-cheeked. That's one good thing about a place like this, even if we don't get to be a part of the real world. You and your real world, Sylvie scoffed. From all that I've heard, it hardly sounds worthy of the praise you often give it. See you later, father. Yes, child, see you later, he answered with an amused shake of his head. Rose, don't forget we have a date at sunset again, okay? I was hoping to watch the show with you in my arms. I'll be back well before then, she chuckled, kissing him goodbye as the pair of them headed for the door. Out on the savannah, it was much quicker and easier to move along in tiger form. Mother and daughter moved quickly across the vast expanse of grass toward the community center, which was several miles away. Their journey took almost an hour, and with the sun's heat beating down on their faces, warming their fur, it was a most enjoyable trek. Along the way they spotted potential prey on numerous occasions. A deer here, a wild boar there, all of them perfectly eligible meals. But by mutual and spoken accord, each tigress knew that what they were really craving was a big stack of pancakes and so many sausages they'd be likely to explode from eating them. Humanization it might be, but so be it. It would still make for a most enjoyable day. As they reached the perimeter of the main building, the two women dutifully transformed back into their human forms. Smiling contentedly, they headed for the door to the cafeteria. However, then their faces soon fell. A group of about 6 lionesses were already seated at one of the tables, and they sneered at the pair as they came inside. Good morning, ladies, said Rose as cheerfully as she could, just to show them she wasn't intimidated. After all, the catty bitches were not allowed to start a fight in here. Good morning, they said dutifully, though it was obvious they didn't mean it. What brings you ladies here today? Breakfast, said Sylvie, undeterred from her primary objective. Her stomach growled for emphasis. It must be nice not to have a care in the world about your figure, tittered the scrawniest woman in the bunch. Maybe you should try it, Leona, snickered another. Shut up, Mira, she gasped indignantly. Ladies, please, you could all stand to put on a few pounds, Rose informed them. It can't be healthy for a lioness to starve herself like that. Yeah? Well, I'll have you know that nobody will be starving come this time tomorrow, Mira informed her smugly. I just heard they're bringing in a new herd of buffalo to supplement the food supply. 500 head of cattle. 500? Gasped Rose. Goodness! They're likely to eat up all the grass and putrefy the water supply. What can those humans be thinking? Of all the ungrateful things to say, Leona gasped. There needs to be somewhat of a balance to things, don't you see? Rose insisted. Yes, of course, scoffed Mira. But only think, we'll likely eat a large portion of them, and the remainder will be free to breed. Their offspring will keep us wallowing in meat for years to come. Speaking of meat, how about some sausages? Sylvie reminded her mother. If you'll excuse us, ladies, Rose said dryly. Yes, of course, Mira said. Oh, and the herd is due to arrive around 8 in the morning, so I'm told. But if I were you, I wouldn't bother to show up until 10. You know the rules. First our clan must get the lion's share. The other women chuckled at this statement as if it was the funniest joke ever. Rose didn't respond to her, instead taking Sylvie by the hand and leading her away. Then she said, "They seem to think they should get the lion's share of everything, don't they? Stupid lions won't even let tigers into the forest. Now they think they've got the right to take half the meat before we even get any? And no doubt they'll have their males out making sure to run us off until they've had their fill. I wish they would have given the tiger shifters a preserve of their own, rather than putting us here." "Calm down, Mother," Sylvie chastised her. "Do you want them to see that they've gotten to you? Don't give them the satisfaction." "You're right, of course," Rose agreed. "Come, let us enjoy our meal and imagine that they are wildebeests or something." Now Sylvie giggled. She could totally get into doing that. "Has Mother told you about the buffalo?" asked Sylvie a few hours later when her father stepped into her hut. "Of course she has, Poppet," he grinned. "But that's happening in the northern fields, so it has nothing to do with you in any case." "But Father, you're the one who complains that I'm soft thanks to living on the preserve," she protested. "I've only ever gone hunting just south of our village, where there's hardly anything bigger than a deer. How do you expect me to become a great hunter if I have to keep practicing in the kitten yard? I would love to try hunting down a buffalo all on my own. See what I could really do if I set my mind to it." "Daughter, I'll not hear another word about it," he insisted. "Now, if you're so keen on hunting, why don't you go out tonight and catch your own dinner like every other self-respecting tiger? It'd be a lot better for you than lying on that bed and reading those human novels you keep getting from the community center. I'm off to do a bit of hunting myself, as it were. Your brother David still hasn't turned up, and your mother is asking me to help her look for him. So that means you'll probably be gone most of the night," said Sylvie, keeping her excitement completely out of her voice. "Yes, so this is good night between us tonight," he said with a nod. "I'll expect to hear all about your kill in the morning." "Yes, sir," she sighed. After he kissed her on her forehead, her father soon departed. She waited a good 10 minutes to make sure he wouldn't see what she was doing, her heart thumping hard the entire time. He thought she was just a cub? Well, she'd show him what she was really made of. Just because she'd never had the opportunity to bag larger game didn't mean she couldn't do it. She was going to sneak out to the northern fields, and there was nothing he could do about it this time. Thankfully, the moon was just a mere sliver in the night sky, shedding very little light over the forbidden plain as she snuck swiftly to the border. The only reason anyone would recognize the place she crossed as a border, of course, was from having been raised to respect its boundaries. Really, it was just another patch in the grass. Sylvie, however, couldn't help but get a little thrill as she stepped to the other side. She transformed into her tiger form and began to slink about in the tall grass, her eyes ever watchful both for prey and for lion scouts. She most certainly wouldn't want to run across one of them. She'd heard that they could be quite brutal in their punishments to tigers stupid enough to venture into the woods, but she was a bit unclear on just where the open territory ended and the lion territory began. She hoped that she wouldn't end up finding out the hard way. All other thoughts fled, however, when she scented the meat. It was only a deer, no bigger than any she'd caught in the kiddie field, but to her it was special. This one would be her first kill in the Forbidden Zone. Every muscle in her body bunched up with excitement as she waited for the right time to pounce. Then zing! She was off like a shot, her prey down, the satisfaction of a job well done beginning to well up inside her. Then she heard a mighty roar. Frozen for a moment, she looked up expecting to see her father. Instead, she saw the most magnificent lion, his mane bushing up as he ran toward her. His movements were graceful and dignified, nothing like she would have expected from a belligerent enemy as he bared down on her. And then she remembered, somewhat belatedly, that he actually was bearing down on her. She was not about to give up her very first kill in the northern field to some stupid lion, no matter how impressive his mane might look as he ran. She had every right to eat, and that was exactly what she intended to do. He was on her with a mighty swipe of his paw, knocking her off of her feet. She roared a protest and rolled, quickly getting on her paws again. She glared at her attacker fearlessly, and he glared at her as well, though he did not hit her again. "What are you doing out here, young tiger? Do you not know on whose land you are trespassing? Surely your parents must have taught you better? Don't talk to me like I'm a child. I'm almost fully grown, and you saw that I was easily able to take down the deer. I won't be sent back to the kiddie field, especially not by the likes of you. That kill happened on lion soil, and I'm feeling a bit peckish. I believe I'll just eat that deer myself. That ought to teach you whose land this is. You'd better not touch my meat, lion, or I'll bite your tail right off." "Are you really so foolhardy, little one? Try me," she insisted, circling the deer as she let out a steady breath which she hadn't been aware she was holding. The lion tilted his head to one side, appraising her. He shook it, then moved forward, bumping his shoulder into hers. "You've got sass, kid, I'll give you that. Why don't we share the kill, and then I'll send you back to your hut where you belong. With that herd coming in tomorrow, this is the last place you should be in the morning." Sylvie was about to protest yet again, but something about this lion made her change her mind. He seemed kind, even though she'd never heard of a lion who was. But she felt almost at ease with him nevertheless. "Very well," she decided. "I'll share my meat with you. Not that you deserve one bite of it. And when we've had our fill, you can tell me what it's like living in the woods. My ancestors were dwellers of the forest, but thanks to you lions I've never set foot in them. It's the least you could do, don't you think? Are you serious? You want to curl up next to a deer carcass and tell campfire stories?" "In our human forms," she added with a smirk. "It'll be fun. You have got to be the weirdest tigress ever," he informed her. "I'm Micah, by the way. I prefer knowing the names of the people I eat with. What's yours?" "I don't know if I should tell you," she hedged. "I really don't want my father to find out about this, and I don't know you well enough to say for certain if you would tell him." "Tell me, already," he grumbled. "Fine. My name is Sylvie Paws, the daughter of the so-called king." "Wow, you really don't want me to rat you out," he chuckled. "Which means that you owe me a favor, and I'd like very much to collect, only I can't tomorrow with that herd coming in. But maybe tomorrow night? I don't suppose you're brave enough to sneak out again?" "I don't know. This time was a special occurrence, on account of my brother's disappearance. He's been gone an entire day. I really hope they can find him. I would hate to think of it if he was killed or collected." "A girl like you shouldn't be talking so openly about the collectors, you know," Micah told her. "The other shifters might think you're very brazen, considering what happens to the people they collect." "Yes, about that. My parents wouldn't tell me anything at all. What do the rich humans do with their shifters once they've bought them? Make them work in the garden or something? Why don't we eat first, and save the conversation for after? My brain is starting to ache trying to keep up with all your questions." "Sorry," Sylvie told him, and then the two of them set to work eating the deer, not saying another thing to each other until they were finished. Then, just as they'd agreed to, each of them shifted into human form, and Micah smiled as he quickly cleared away a circle of grass and used it as kindling to light a fire. Apparently he'd been carrying a bit of wood for just such a purpose when he'd spotted her. "Come on, it's starting to get cold," he said. "You can share my bedroll with me so we can warm up a bit. I'm not getting into bed with some guy the first just met." Sylvie gasped. "Don't be dumb. I'll wrap it around us, okay? We can lean against that tree." "Oh, all right," she conceded. "You're sure you want to do this?" he chuckled. "You never know, I might bite." "No, you won't, or you would have done it already," she pointed out. "You're pretty smart for a tiger, aren't you?" Micah snickered. They curled up together by the tree, trying to stay warm. So, what exactly do you want to know? Have you ever climbed a tree? She asked curiously. Tons of times, he laughed. Ask me something harder. Okay, she blushed, her mind going someplace it definitely shouldn't have at his use of that last word. What's it like to pick berries? Oh, and do lions ever eat the monkeys? Berries aren't really my thing. And neither are monkeys, he said, laughing now. You don't know what to ask, do you? Not really, she admitted. I've never been there, remember? That's very true, he agreed with a nod. Then let me tell you about my home. Lions don't all live in one big town, like you tigers are doing here. We form prides, with roughly 10 to 20 people in them, mostly males. My group has 12, and there are only 3 females to us 9. Most of the males are there only to protect the others, never getting to mate unless they choose to run off and become the leader of a pride of their own. Or sometimes they might take over the one they're in if the leader is too weak. Oh, so you're out here all the time alone? She clarified. Yeah, I do get lonely sometimes, he had to admit. Hence the reason I am here with you. It's my job to run you off. I wonder what anybody would say if they found out I was slacking. Don't worry, I'll never tell them, said Sylvie with a smile. Yeah. Well, I hope not, because otherwise I'll have to bite your tail off, he teased her. But enough of this, now, I really think we should get you home.
Hey there. Did you know that we've other hot romances like this that we want to release? But we need your help. Subscribing shows us that you're part of our journey and allows us to make more of these stories at a higher quality. So please, my queen, subscribe to the Romancely YouTube channel now. Thanks. Now back to your story. Chapter 2. Sylvie hadn't been bold enough to openly take a look at Micah while they'd been curled under his blanket earlier. And now she was regretting it as she tried to get to sleep in her bed. She'd managed to get away with her little outing, since her parents appeared not to have returned to check on her while she was gone. She couldn't believe she was laying there thinking about a lion. Of all things, most of the male lions never came to the community center. Their attitude tended to mirror the one her father had about it was making the young people soft and dependent on the humans to keep them alive. He believed they would be better off back out in the real world, except the forest their people once called home wasn't even there anymore. Now it was a human housing project instead. But even though she hadn't looked closely at Micah, there were still a few traits he'd share with his fellow lions that she could count on. Golden brown eyes, sandy-colored hair, high cheekbones. He seemed rather well put together as well. Lean, muscular, and tall. His arms draped around her had felt warm and comforting. Better than they should have been. She was finding it difficult to drift off to sleep as she continued to remember that feeling. Lions and tigers who didn't shift never became mates, and to Sylvie's knowledge that remained the case among the shifters. But a rebellious part of her wondered if it had to. After all, they may shift into different animals, but they shared the trait of becoming human. And most of the time, their people remained in that human form. It was only during hunting that they bothered to transform or forgetting places in a hurry, like she and her mother had done earlier that day. At the community center, the humans had even begun educating shifters, offering them hope that one day they may even be able to go out into the real world and become citizens among their human counterparts. But Sylvie didn't think that was ever going to happen. Not when the shifters had become so valuable to the collectors, for whatever it was they wanted them for. What was to say they wouldn't next want to collect an educated shifter and collect them right out of whatever job they'd managed to land? It was hardly worth taking the risk, in her opinion. And another thing, how did she go from conceding to share her meal to suddenly owing him a favor? She knew she ought not to have told him who she really was. Now she would have to sneak out again tomorrow night, and she had no idea how she was supposed to pull it off. She could always not go, but then she ran the risk that he would tell her father the whole story. And while she didn't really think he would actually do it, she couldn't really afford to take that risk. When she finally managed to drift off to sleep, Sylvie had a sex dream. She'd started having them about a month or two ago, and her mother had said it was normal for a female who was nearing her mating time. And that was just what she needed to worry about, she mused, as she awakened with a start, her orgasm still pulsing as she realized that she dreamed of human forms, and that the man in the dream had coloring like a lion's. That little realization troubled her for the greater part of the day. Most of the adult tigers had gone out to the northern plain to hunt buffalo, and of course she was not invited. She spent a great deal of the afternoon helping to process meat and hides, and she despaired of ever reaching a decision about meeting Micah later that night. If she wasn't so keen on keeping her little outing last night a secret, Sylvie never would have bothered to plot a plan of escape. She knew that no good could come of forming any sort of a friendship with the lion. But as luck would have it, or lack of luck, as the case might be, David had still not been found. Damon and Rose began to fear their son was no longer on the preserve, but they had decided they simply must go out and look for him again tonight, now that all the hunting frenzy had died down. "So, how did your little hunt go last night?" asked her father as he and her mother were preparing to go. "You never told me." "I caught a deer," Sylvie shrugged. "I'm so full. I probably won't go out tonight at all." "Well, that's good," he grinned. "One missing offspring is about the limit of what I can currently endure." "Good luck in your search tonight, you two," she replied. "I'm sure he's probably just holed up in a hut with one of the local females. He'll probably show up in the next couple of days." "Sylvie, you don't need to be speculating on your brother's amorous adventures," Damon chastised her. "Are we back to this again?" she sighed. "Father, I'm practically an adult now. Soon, I'll be in need of a mating hut of my own." "We'll cross that bridge when we come to it," he grumbled. "Why don't you get some sleep? We'll see you in the morning." "Yeah, see you," Rose added, kissing her daughter on the cheek. Then her parents were gone. Sylvie debated for a whole 10 minutes, but in the end it didn't take her very long to head for the door. Unfortunately, she realized with mounting concern that her body was thrumming in that particular way, just as it had in her dream. She really was not heading to the northern field to meet that lion for such a reason. He was not the least bit attractive to her. She did not remember precisely how he smelled, or the way his arms had felt around her as they'd curled up under his blanket last night. She couldn't help but wonder exactly what he was going to ask her to do as a favor, however. How many things could a young female do for a lion in his prime out in the middle of an open field? Surely whatever he wanted must have to do with either food or fun, in some way or another. There could be no doubt of that. When she reached the perimeter of the northern field, she saw a man standing there, arms folded over his chest as he looked at her. She was currently in tiger form, but she took a cue from Micah and transformed too. She was far enough away now that she could get a better look at him. He looked very much as he'd done in her dream. Tawny hair flowed in long waves all down his back, and she could tell even through his t-shirt that he was rippling with muscles. His abdomen was flat, and his hips were slim, and when he cast her a smile in greeting, she realized that he was devastatingly handsome. How had she missed that before? "I'm only here to do his favor," she reminded herself. "This is probably the last time I'll see him. I mustn't get attached, especially not to a lion." "You took your time getting here," he teased her as she came to his side. "I was beginning to think I'd have to go look for you." "In the tiger huts?" she gaped. "You wouldn't dare." "I might have," he shrugged. "But since you're here, I suppose we'll never know." "Yeah, I guess not," she had to agree. Her voice sounded strange in her ears, but she dismissed the notion resolutely. "Stop thundering, Heart. He's not the male for you." "Well, shall we go then?" he asked, holding out his hand for her to take. Sylvie took it and began to follow wherever it was he was leading her. What is this big favor you want from me, anyway? She wanted to know. Last night, after I brought you home, so to speak, I returned to the deer and prepped the meat and hide, he explained. I would hope for nothing less, she said with a nod of approval. The two of them stepped into the little campsite they'd made before, and she saw the pelt neatly stretched onto a wooden frame, and a large leather bag with the lingering scent of fresh meat at its side. But what has that got to do with me? I want you to carry the meat while I bring the hide, he explained. I find it unwieldy doing both. Carry it where? She asked warily. Only to my great-grandparents' hut, he reassured her. They've grown too old to hunt, and they live on their own at the edge of the forest. And don't worry about being attacked along the way. No one will bother you since you'll be there with me. The edge of the forest? Sylvie repeated breathlessly. Surely, without his escort, she would never have been able to go so near. Excitement and curiosity welled up inside her as she couldn't quite stifle a grin. Yes, he smirked. Your naughtiness these last 2 nights knows no bounds. Come along. I'm sure those two will be very glad to receive your gifts. And don't worry, my grandmother is far too old to be as catty as the young females can be. I've heard some of the things they say to the tigers, and I must say I don't share their sentiments at all. Sylvie laughed as they started to walk. Why are you being so nice to me, Micah? You know our people don't get along. Because shifters should be more intelligent than their merely animal counterparts, he insisted. Because our human side has the capacity for something more. We should know better than to treat each other so poorly. Wouldn't it be much better if our people could manage to get along? That's a pretty tall order, Sylvie observed, and not one that would be easily accomplished with the lionesses I saw the other day. Their attitudes would have to change drastically before we'd ever manage to have a meaningful exchange. Micah sighed. Yes, I don't doubt it, he agreed. Sometimes I wish I could start a new pride with only like-minded lions who would treat tigers with respect just as they would treat us in return. It must be wonderful to live so peacefully together like your people seem to do. Oh, we have our differences here and there, Sylvie shrugged. In the wild, of course, tigers are not very social at all. It's mostly our higher, human side that allows us to get along, as you say. We have the intelligence to know better. He gave a grunt of appreciation, and then the two lapsed into a companionable silence as they continued together across the plain. It was much farther to walk this way than it was to walk to the community center, Sylvie noted as they continued along. Took them nearly an hour to get where they were going. Here we are, said Micah as he topped a rise. A small, neatly made hut came into view. It had electric lights shining in its windows, and Sylvie glanced over at the generator at its side in surprise. They have power, she said, cocking her head to one side. Why? They're not part of a pride, he said with a shrug. They can pretty much do whatever they want. I see, she said with a nod. Micah, is that you? Called a woman's voice, and then an elderly woman stepped out the door. Oh, and you've brought a female along with you? I wondered if you'd ever get around to doing that. Oh, no, it's not like that, Sylvie gasped. I'm just tagging along to bring you this meat. We shared a deer last night, and this is the remainder. Hello, grandmother, Micah said, kissing her on her withered cheek. Micah's great-grandfather stepped out as well. A young tigress? You're sharing a kill with us? Now, why would you be doing that? It's a long story, sir, said Sylvie with a blush. I mean, I know normally a tigress would never do that. But well, when Micah told me about you two out here on your own, it sounded like a really nice thing to do. Very commendable of you, he replied. I wish more young people today would try to be so kind. Sylvie, "This is my great-grandfather, Jeremiah, and his wife Naomi," said Micah then. "They have been on this preserve so long. They can even remember when the tigers first arrived." "You all have biblical names," she observed. "Well, yes, ours were given to us by the humans, of course, back when they discovered our ability to shift," Naomi explained. "But I decided to name all my children in the same way, and as you can see, the tradition carried on." "Did you have another name, then?" Sylvie asked curiously. "I mean, besides the one you were given by the humans?" "Only my pride name," she smirked. "That I only share with people very close to me, you must understand." "Yes, of course," Sylvie nodded. "The two of you simply must come in for a spot of tea," she said then. "But Naomi, it's the middle of the night," Sylvie pointed out. "Tea has no time clock," she protested with a smirk. "Unless you'd rather not?" "Oh no, I'd love a spot of tea," Sylvie agreed with a grin. "I'm fascinated to hear all your stories about the humans and the preserve. You must have so many." "Yes, and not all of them good," she agreed. "But I believe I'll save the horror stories for another time. I do hope you'll come to see us again." I don't know, really," she admitted. "It was awfully difficult to get away, and I'm only here because Micah protected me along the way. I suppose that would have to be up to him." "We can discuss it later," he said. Sylvie couldn't tell what he was thinking, and it made her blush. Visiting his family once was a friendly gesture, but if she continued to do so, wouldn't that be a part of something more? She didn't really know how that sort of thing worked. They spent several hours inside the little hut with Jeremiah and Naomi, and Sylvie learned a great deal more about the preserve, humans in general, and even a bit more about the collectors. "You mean to say you were part of a collection once?" Sylvie gasped. "Both of you?" "Yes, briefly, my dear, though we managed to escape," said Jeremiah with a frown. "But that was before they'd invented the collars, and our collector didn't try to mate with us, either. They at least gave us some dignity. Not like these depraved people who capture our people these days." "Grandfather, I'm sure Sylvie doesn't want to hear about the collector's depravity," Micah admonished him. "She hasn't quite reached estrus. I doubt anyone's explained just what goes on once a shifter is stolen from here." "Hasn't she, then?" he asked. "I thought I detected a slight scent coming on." "Oh well, then I suppose this will be your first. Have any of the young tigers been paying you more attention than before, my dear? If not, it should be happening soon." Micah scowled deeply, hearing that. Sylvie couldn't help but wonder why. She felt her abdomen constrict into a tight coil, and some part of her became repulsed at the idea of the young males making such attempts. It was almost as though a cord connected between her and Micah, drawing them together, and all she could visualize was the way his arms had encircled her the night before. "No, sir, none of the young males have said anything," she said, "though I imagine that may be partly because I'm Damon's daughter." "Ah, so we are in the presence of a princess," Naomi chuckled. "And a very kind and lovely one at that. Sylvie, I'd like to offer you one word of advice, if I may." "Sure," she said. "No matter what happens, you must always follow your heart," she said, glancing meaningfully in Micah's direction. "Remember that you're not just a tiger, you're a human as well." Sylvie blushed, realizing what the woman was trying to say. She couldn't look at Micah in that moment, and then he cleared his throat. "Well, I suppose we had better get going," he said. "It's a long walk back to Tigerlands, and I wouldn't want anyone to notice you're gone. Surely we wouldn't want you to get into trouble for this little outing, would we?" "No, not at all," she agreed, getting to her feet. Then she bent and gave Naomi a kiss on her cheek, and Jeremiah one as well. "I really enjoyed meeting you two. Thank you for the tea. You may call me by my given name next time, if we should meet again," Naomi told her with a smile. "It is Emrys." Tears sprung up in Sylvie's eyes when she told her that. It was such a personal thing to give someone your cat name. She replied, I'm honored, Emrys. My name is Emyao. My parents are rather silly sometimes. Micah held back a little laugh as he reached for her hand and took her with him towards the door. He exchanged a meaningful glance with the two old people as they went, and Sylvie was fairly certain he'd thought something at them. But if he did, he hadn't shared it with her as well. The moon was high in the sky now, lighting the path as the pair of them walked back, still in their human forms. By mutual unspoken agreement, neither one of them wanted to spend their time together as cats, which was a somewhat telling thing in Sylvie's eyes. Will I be seeing them again? She asked tentatively as they reached the place where they would part. Do you want to see them again? He asked softly, awkwardly. His grip on her hand tightened and he pulled her subtly closer to his side. I think so, yes. She nodded, well aware he wasn't asking about them, but about himself. The thrum that accompanied his presence moved through her body yet again. A gentle, aching pulse that somehow settled finally between her thighs. I'd like that, he said, turning her to face him, wrapping her into his embrace. Would you? She asked breathlessly. Very much, he said. I don't think I should tempt fate by sneaking out again tomorrow night, she pointed out. Perhaps we could meet at the community center, he said softly. What? But you don't like going to the community center, she protested. I would go there for this, he replied. Just to see me, you mean? She clarified softly. Yeah, just to see you, kid, he said. I don't know, I think you're kind of growing on me. What are you doing tomorrow? Apparently, going to the community center, she smirked. Good, he said, and kissed her on her forehead. But then he angled his head, and his lips came down to cover hers briefly. Then he let her go, and she forced herself to move away. See you tomorrow then, she called back over her shoulder just before she went down into the slight ravine where the tiger's territory began. He waved back, transformed into a lion, and then he was gone. Sylvie's mind and body began a heated war within her as she continued on her way. She had no idea what time it was, and she began to worry that her parents might have returned by then and found that she was missing. And the last thing she wanted for them to do was ground her for being out late. Then, she wouldn't be able to visit the community center at all. Not that she really should be, she reminded herself. She knew she shouldn't have gone to see that lion while she was feeling so alive earlier. This was going to get real complicated real fast. But the truth was, she didn't see how she could stop herself even if she tried. Because, even though his little kisses had been brief and rather chaste, they had left her craving something more. Something she didn't quite understand, but her body certainly did. She made it back to her bed just in time for her mother to come in for the night. She smiled at her curiously and asked, Why were you outside, Sylvie? I couldn't sleep, she lied. I had another one of those dreams. Not out for a clandestine stroll with one of the young males, I hope? She smirked. No, not at all, she said. More like a lion in his prime, who had kissed her goodnight and wanted to see her again tomorrow. There was no way she was going to tell her that. I'm feeling sleepy now, though. Thanks for checking on me, Mother. Was your hunt for David a success? No, not at all, Rose sighed. I fear we're never going to see your brother again.
Chapter 3. The following morning, Sylvie was feeling quite annoyed with her mother as the two of them walked together towards the community center. She hadn't counted on her wanting to come along when she'd mentioned that she was going to go. Yes, that's a lovely idea, she said. I need a few things from the store, and we could have breakfast. What a wonderful way to start our day. I could certainly use the distraction. She probably should have felt guilty when she heard her mother say that. After all, her brother had already been missing for 3 days, and she'd barely even spared him more than a thought or two. But that was probably because she had a feeling wherever he was enjoying himself immensely. She could feel it in her bones. So, she should feel guilty for not caring about her mother's upset over it, then. Regardless, the last thing she should be feeling as they headed toward the entrance was irritation that Micah would be there waiting, and see her come in together with her mother. Would he still talk to her? Would he completely turn away, and never contact her again? She had no idea what he was likely to do when the two of them arrived. He was sitting at a table near the door, nowhere near the 5 lionesses who kept trying to catch his eye. He spotted her, and their eyes met and held. Only after he seemed to drink in the sight of her did his gaze flicker over to her companion. "Is that your mother?" he asked. "Now I see where you get your good looks." "Stop. I'm sorry. She decided to come along to shop when I told her where I was headed. I really did want to spend time with you. But come to the garden while she shops. She'll never think that's odd. There are so many people there, though. Just meet me there, meow," he teased. "How unfair I don't know your cat name, Micah. Are you going to tell me? When you come to me in the garden, perhaps," he said. "But not before then. What are you and that lion talking about, dear?" Rose asked her then. "Lion?" asked Sylvie nervously. "What lion?" "That rather handsome one upon which your eyes are currently trained so intently," she replied. "Oh, I hadn't seen him," she lied. "I was just spacing off. Sorry. Well, let's get something to eat," Rose said then. "I think I'd like to go out to the gardens while you shop," said Sylvie smoothly. "I'm just really in no mood to be indoors on such a lovely day." "That's fine, darling," she said with a nod. "But I warn you, I may be in there for quite a while. And you'll probably need to help me carry back some of the things later." "Fine by me," she replied as she forced herself to stop looking at Micah. "Oh, Princess, I'm so glad to see you are here today," called Leona from her table. "I'm glad to see you survived your trip into the northern plains last night." Sylvie froze, and she saw Micah thinking at Leona out of the corner of her eye. Squaring her shoulders, she replied, "I'm sure you must be mistaken. I wasn't anywhere near the northern plains last night." "You're sure?" she asked, nervously glancing as far from Micah as possible. "Perhaps you're right. It must have been another tigress." If Rose was aware of the interplay that Micah had in that conversation, she never let it show on her face. In fact, if anything, she seemed too placid for her usual demeanor, and her only words at all were, "Well then, ladies, good morning. We've things to do today." "How rude!" Mira gasped as Rose grasped Sylvie by the arm and pulled her along to the ordering counter. "Can't abide those catty women," she muttered. "Let's eat." After they ate a meal in which each of them was distracted for different reasons, Rose kissed her daughter on the cheek and headed off to the store, leaving her to do as she wished. Sylvie saw that Micah had already left, so she headed for the door, knowing right where he was likely to be. "Sylvie?" called Leona before she could get past her. "Yes?" she asked, stopping in mid-stride to look at her. "What's going on between you and Micah?" she demanded. "He never comes to the community center, and now all of a sudden he's here and threatening me if I don't leave you alone. That seems mighty suspicious." "I don't know what you mean," Sylvie shrugged, and she continued on her way. She walked past the store and the beauty salon, and cut through the rest of the row of little buildings to reach the gardens which lay beyond. Micah was waiting for her. "There you are, my beauty," he said into her ear as she joined him, making her blush. "Be good, Micah," she chastised him. "People are watching and Leona has already noticed, too. Somehow I don't think any of them would approve if we were to do anything more than talk." "Did you want to do more than talk?" he inquired in a husky tone, still not moving away from her ear. "Of course not," she lied. "It would be such a bad idea. I didn't ask what they wanted," he pointed out. "Come, let's go into the library." Why would you want to go in there? Sylvie wanted to know. There's a great place in the back where we could discuss all this, he said suggestively. Why do I think you discussed something there before? Sylvie asked with a smirk. Does that bother you? He teased. That I would know what I was doing? No, she admitted, taking his hand. I kind of like that. Good, he replied, as they walked together through the garden and made a beeline for the library. Sylvie realized that the thrum had just gone into overdrive. Her body was singing at the feel of Mika's large hand encircling her smaller one. She couldn't wait until they reached the secluded place of which he spoke so she could get a proper taste of him at last. It seemed like Mika felt the same way, because just as soon as they were hidden among the tall rows of shelves, he pulled Sylvie into his arms. He nuzzled his nose into her hair, drinking in the scent of her. I had a dream about you last night, he admitted as he dragged his lips over her forehead and her eyes.
Oh no, it's about to get hot, but we can't put this on YouTube as they don't allow it. I'm sorry. But check the description of this video to join the Romance Audiobook Insiders for free and get details on how you can get the steamy scenes in future. Okay, back to the story.
You still didn't tell me your name, she reminded him, trying to break the tension between them. Baror, he said as they began walking again. It means, protector. I see, she smiled. And you are, too, aren't you? You're a very great protector. Of your pride, of your great-grandparents and even of me, really. You wanted to protect me today from Leona's tattling. I always protect the things I care about most, he said as they stepped into the garden again. Rose was watching the pair of them as they walked, and they were glad they had opted not to hold hands again as they came out of the library. Sylvie smiled as she rejoined her mother. That was an interesting book, sir, she said. I'm glad that I came to see it with you. Anytime, Miss Pa, Micah said, and she easily caught the merriment in his eye. Weren't you the lion we saw in the commissary earlier? Asked Rose curiously. Yes, I believe so, said Micah. Good day to you, Mrs. Pa. Or do you prefer Majesty? God, no. I get enough of that from the humans without you starting in, she replied. You've got a lot of things here, Micah said then. Shall I help you carry them to the border of Tigerland? Would you? She asked gratefully. That would be so nice. I'm so worried about my son. I suppose I went overboard. He's been missing for several days. Yes, your daughter mentioned that. He nodded, and Rose cast them a curious glance. How long have you two known each other? She asked as they began to walk with all the bags. We met in the garden, Sylvie lied. I guess he thought I was staring at him, too. I had to tell him I was daydreaming about a book I wanted to read. That's why we went to the library. Oh, I see, she nodded. It's just that you seemed so familiar as you were headed back. I thought you must have spoken sometime before. No, ma'am, but we were certainly enjoying the conversation just then, said Micah with a smile. Your daughter has a keen wit. A most refreshing trait for me. You must know how tiring it is, dealing with lionesses of Leona's ilk all the time. I confess, I only ever return to the Pride if I must, just to avoid her whenever possible. Now that I can believe, Rose replied with a roll of her eyes. Because of the number of bags on their arms, none of the three could return to cat form as they stepped out of the community center and out into the fields. The rest of the walk was spent in cheerful conversation until they'd reached the little slope that would take the two females back down onto Tigerlands. Thank you so much, Micah. Who would have ever expected such a polite lion as you are? Well, yes. Unless of course you try to enter the territory I'm sworn to protect, he shrugged. If you did that, I might have to bite off your tail. Her brow shot up in surprise. Sylvie told you that, right? That saying? Yes, I believe so, he agreed. She made it up when she was a small cub, she chuckled. I'm not surprised you've heard it already. She says it all the time. Anyway, Thank you kindly for all your help. Do enjoy the rest of your day. Good day to you. As well, ma'am, he said with a bow of his head. See you tonight, kitten? I hope so. Gee, goodbye, Micah, Sylvie said as she stepped away. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. The rest of the day went by in a blur as Sylvie continued to wonder if she'd be able to sneak out to see Micah that night. Her body ached all over, and in her mind she kept replaying the way it had felt when Micah had touched and kissed her. But all that did was make her feel even worse or better, depending on one's perception of such things. Sylvie couldn't make up her mind which of them it actually was. More than once, she caught her mother watching her with a speculative look on her face. She knew what the woman must be wondering, and she would be right. The attraction between Micah and herself was too readily apparent to anyone who had seen them together. It had been apparent that morning, when she had seen the pair of them staring at each other as they entered the commissary at the community center. She wasn't stupid, she had to have worked it out. The only real question was what she thought of it. Sylvie couldn't really tell if she was pleased that her daughter had found someone to make her happy or upset because he happened to be a lion. She knew beyond a doubt that she wasn't going to impart the news to her husband at this point, or there would probably be hell to pay. He was already suffering from the loss of his son. The last thing he needed was to hear more upsetting news. And he would be upset, too, if he knew. He would do everything in his power to prevent Sylvie from taking the attraction to the next level. Surely her mother must know that as well. It was telling that she hadn't said a word. It was almost as if she'd given her blessing in a way. While she was sitting around by the main campfire in the central area, human form intact like everyone else who was there, Sylvie suddenly became aware of the young males whispering together as they were looking over at her. Annoyance ripped through her as she realized what they must be talking about. "Would you three stop staring?" she complained. "I'm trying to concentrate on reading my book. Don't you have anything better to do than pester me?" "Not really," said the boldest of them, Ethan, if she was not mistaken. "You seem different lately, Sylvie. We've been trying to work out which of us should point that out." "I guess you must be the one who got elected then, right?" she smirked. Feeling a bit cocky now, he said, "Well, yeah, I guess you could say that." "I'm not quite sure why you think I'd choose any of you at all," she pointed out. "You're just boys, aren't you? Why wouldn't you expect I'd rather have a male in his prime instead? One who is more experienced. Is that what you've been holding out for?" he asked, puffing out his cheeks and giving a deflated sigh. "That explains a lot." "Good," she said with another smirk. "Then if you don't mind, I'd like to get back to my book now." "Wait," he said then, moving to sit next to her. "Just because I'm young and untried doesn't mean I couldn't be good at it." "How do you know if you won't even try?" His persistence was somewhat unnerving, she decided, because all she wanted was to go out and meet Micah in the grass in another few hours. Yet, she knew that she probably should be considering him instead of dismissing him out of hand. After all, he was a tiger and Micah was not. By all rights, she should be paying much more attention to him. But the idea of another male's lips meeting hers, after having tasted Micah's, was appalling. Intellectual arguments aside, it felt like her body had already made up her mind for her. The attraction she felt for Micah was something she couldn't ignore. Besides, he was kind, and gentle, and very handsome. She fancied that she might even be a bit in love with him. While she was thinking this, Ethan had insinuated himself closer still, and suddenly she realized he'd put his arm around her shoulders. Straightening up, she glared at him and asked, "Ethan, what do you think you're doing?" "Cuddling?" he said hopefully. "For goodness sakes, I already told you to stop," she complained. "What does a girl have to do to read a book around here? Why do you like reading those human stories so much anyway?" he grumbled. "They've nothing to do with us, you know. We're living in this place to be separate from them. I hope you're not contemplating the idea of mating with one of them." "Of course not," she protested. I'm only curious what they are like with each other. That doesn't mean I want one of them for myself. That's as stupid as saying just because I'm reading Swiss Family Robinson means I want to hop into some boat and get shipwrecked on some island somewhere. Which I most certainly don't. Haven't you ever enjoyed a good book before, Ethan? I haven't, he admitted. I never bothered to learn to read. What good is reading to me? My job is to hunt, protect the Tigerlands, and provide for my family one day. How is reading going to help me to do that? I don't suppose it does, she agreed. But still, it can be a lot of fun to do on your downtime. I bet if you asked them to, the humans would teach you. Smirking, he asked, if I knew how to read, would you like me any better? The question surprised her. She neither liked nor disliked Ethan, truth be told. She only saw him as one of the young males. A group which she'd never had a great deal of interest in. Even though it had been understood throughout her growth period that once she came into estrus they'd be likely to become more interesting. Trouble was, she still didn't particularly think they were. She knew the reason for that, though. Apparently, her tastes ran a bit more toward tawny, tall men with bulging muscles and a ready smile. Sweet men, who were kind to their elders and helpful to her mother. She doubted that Ethan would have ever offered to carry home her mother's purchases, or to make conversation with her along the way as he did so. And that was why, when she boiled it all down, she didn't find him attractive. No, in the end she simply had to do as Maress had suggested, and follow her heart. The old lioness had very astutely guessed that this thing between Micah and herself was going to happen. She knew, viewing through her older eyes, just what to look for. Maybe even the very fact that Micah had brought her there at all had been telling. What male in his prime would bring home a female to his elders if he wasn't at least trying to see how she interacted with them? He'd probably been testing her, and she had, of course, passed with flying colors. That made her happy, almost as happy as it made her feel when she next removed Ethan's arm from her person and got to her feet. Maybe she could read better if she took her book to the solitude of her hut. At least there, she wouldn't have to deal with him.
Chapter 4. Sylvie could be grateful for the fact that the moon was waning, since the night was somewhat darker than it had been on both of the others. She was grateful, too, that her parents had decided to go out and look one last time for their missing son. They'd been gone only about 20 minutes before she, herself, was out the door. Unfortunately, Ethan appeared to have been lurking, and as soon as she stepped outside he was by her side. "Sylvie, are you going hunting tonight?" "I was thinking about it, but only just," she grumbled. "I'd love to go with you," he offered. "Oh, I don't know," she said. "I'm not very hungry after all the food I ate for breakfast." "Then why are you outside?" he asked curiously, maybe even hopefully. "My hut was a bit stuffy," she said. "I wanted some air, but I believe now I've gotten enough. I think I'm going to just head back in." "Would you like some company?" he practically purred. "Excuse me?" she gasped. "Come on, Sylvie. I saw your parents leaving," he cajoled her. "We've got plenty of time." "Have I not already told you no?" she complained. "Listen, Ethan, you're a good kid, but I've already got a date for the evening, and you're kind of messing that up for me. You already have weight. Who are you supposed to meet?" he said, confused. "Is it one of the other boys, because I already won the fight fair and square? I better not have to trounce them all over again." "No, it's not one of the boys," she sighed. "Now, would you please just go away?" Reluctantly, Ethan clamped his mouth shut and stalked off. Sylvie took one look at him and knew that she wouldn't be able to leave anytime soon, or the upset tiger would be highly likely to follow her and see who she met. She really wished she hadn't told him about her date, but she'd been so frustrated it had just come out, and now she regretted it very much. Frowning, she returned to her hut and closed the door. Every once in a while over the next couple of hours, she peeked out her window and saw that Ethan was still lurking about nearby. Then she looked again, and he was nowhere in sight. Still feeling cautious, she crept out of her hut and looked around, but she didn't spot the young tiger anywhere, so she swiftly headed for the exit gate. However, rather than immediately head out into the field, she hid off to the side to wait. Sure enough, Ethan came out a couple of minutes later and scanned the area with a determined look on his face. Then he headed into the kiddie fields, where he knew she was allowed to go. It wouldn't take him very long to realize that she hadn't gone south once he reached the middle of that field and she was nowhere in sight, so she was quick to take advantage and transformed, loping as fast as she could to the rise. Up she went, and then she swiftly disappeared into the grasslands above. Certain that Ethan could easily track her by her scent, she next ran in the opposite direction of the one she wanted to take, urinating along the way. The much stronger odor might buy her just a little time before he figured out which way she had actually gone. Then she stalked out further into the long grass, adding some distance while she was at it. Still, it was unlikely that she would lose him completely. Micah's nose had been at work, too, it seemed, since he found her soon after. He was a lion at the moment, and he rubbed his mane along one of her shoulders affectionately. "You got away," he said happily. "Not precisely," she admitted. "A young male might be following me. Well, I'll get rid of him easily enough. You go ahead to the campsite and wait, and I'll scare off your unwelcome friend." "Thank you," she replied, relieved to have his help. Then she happily headed for the little camp they'd shared the last 2 nights and settled down by the fire pit to wait. She heard a couple of roars, one of them Micah's and the other one most probably Ethan's, and then her lion returned not long afterwards. Each of them transformed into human forms as their eyes met and held. Micah looked like the cat who had stolen the cream, and well he should. He had just chased off the competition after all. Little matter that he was no competition in her eyes. "You look great in that dress," he said as his eyes scanned over the outfit she'd picked out for the evening. Then he held out his hand and said, "Come on. I've got something to show you." "What?" she protested. "Wait." But Micah didn't slow down, and his enthusiasm was contagious. Sylvie couldn't help but follow along behind him as he practically ran. They came upon an old, empty hut out in the grass, practically overgrown to the point of being a part of the savannah itself. "What is this place?" she asked curiously. "No one's been in here for some time," he explained. "You can tell by the smell. I think it must have belonged to a solitary tigress before." It's a mating shack," she gasped, her face going red. "I thought you might like it." He smirked as he ran a finger down her spine softly, suggestively. It was the sweetest gesture, him bringing her here. She turned to face him, her eyes bright with emotion. "Very much," she admitted, and her voice was breathless and intense. Micah reacted to it by yanking her into his arms, kissing her soundly. All the while they kissed, he reached down and opened the latch, practically carrying Sylvie through the door. There was a little cot inside, freshly stuffed with soft, sweet-smelling grass. She knew he'd done it himself. It made her want him even more. Grinning broadly, she threw herself down onto the little bed and crawled around, making it comfortable before turning to look up at Micah invitingly. He laughed at her. "Kitten, you're a bit overdressed for that sort of a bed, don't you think?" he asked as he pulled his shirt over his head and tossed it aside.
Hi there. Unfortunately, we've had to take this steamy scene out as it's against YouTube's terms of service. If you don't want to miss out on love scenes in future stories, check the description and join the Romance Audiobook Insiders for free for more info. Okay, back to the story.
After she had begun mating with Micah, he had told her that he doubted they'd ever have any children, that because of the differences between natural lions and tigers, Such a birth never occurred in the wild, and among shifters such a thing was unheard of as well. However, about a month later, a blissful month of clandestine meetings by night and polite exchanges by day at the community center, Sylvie was beginning to suspect that he was wrong. She felt different, like something monumental was going on inside of her. Something she wasn't sure was a very good idea. She went to the vet by herself, not wishing to say anything to Micah until she was sure. She supposed if she was pregnant, they could always live together in their little hut, since it was likely the other tigers would force her right out of their village. "You're very right, Miss Paws, about your condition," the veterinarian told her. "You're carrying just one cub, but she seems a bit bigger than I'd expect for the time you say has passed. But, going by your reported time of activity, I'd say you've got roughly 2 months to plan for your baby's arrival. You'll begin to show very soon, and you should try to remain in tiger form as much as you can during that time. It helps make the birthing process easier if you do." "Doctor, there's one more thing," she said. "Will there be any kind of complications associated with birthing a liger cub?" Her face fell for a moment as she took this in, and then she grimaced. "Do you have any idea what kind of trouble that's going to cause?" "Well, we both thought, we didn't think we'd ever make a cub together," she explained with a blush. "I'm as shocked about this as you are." "And the father?" she asked. "I haven't mentioned this to him," she explained, "but I know he'll be pleased. We've become very close over the time we've spent together. I can't imagine him being anything else but pleased. All right, I have to tell you this up front. What you're saying to me now, it's unprecedented. We'll have to watch you carefully and monitor your cub. We may need to move you to the community center just to keep you well, to make sure nothing bad happens to you." "You mean to keep me safe?" Sylvie nodded. "From the other shifters. I understand that, but I won't come unless Micah can be here too." "Yes, of course," she nodded. "I would never exclude your mate unless that was your wish." "Thanks," she smirked. "What for?" "For calling him my mate," she grinned. "I like the sound of that." "Well, then I suppose you'd better go and tell him what I said." The doctor chuckled. "All of what I said. And you might want to bring your mother here to me, rather than tell her by yourself. I know she will understand this, but I don't think the rest of the tigers will share her joy. I want you confined well before word of this reaches either of the shifter groups. We may even be forced to hide you and Micah somewhere off the preserve once word gets out about this." Sylvie gasped. "Do you really think it will be that bad?" "It's not just the two of you I'm worried about," she said with a frown. "It's, the collectors. If they learn about your daughter's birth, it's difficult to say what they would do. Your little family might be much better off on your own." "I see," she nodded. "You've given me a lot to think about. We could always just terminate," she suggested. "I know it's not a happy thought, but under these circumstances, Dr. Odell, I thank you to never mention that idea again." Sylvie cut her off. "I love Micah, and if I've been blessed with the ability to reproduce with him, I'm proud to do so, no matter what." "I admire your courage, Sylvie Paws," she said solemnly. "You're going to need it to get through this." "Pregnant," Micah repeated for the third time, his expression more stunned than anything else. He was shaking his head like he couldn't quite wrap it around the idea. "But how?" "Dr. Odell would like me to bring you to the community center to discuss that very thing," she explained. "She thinks that maybe we should stay there for now, until we can think how to deal with repercussions this might cause." Micah nodded. "Repercussions," he repeated. "Oh, there's bound to be a few of those. Scientists, fellow shifters, collectors, they're all going to want a piece of us. But the one good thing about this is we'll finally get to be together, won't we? I mean, you won't have to return home. I could hold you all night and all day, and nobody will have a thing to say about it." "I will," she chuckled. Micah grinned wickedly. Would you now? He teased. And what, exactly, would you have to say? Hooray!
Oh no, another love scene had to be taken out due to YouTube's policies. If you haven't already, join the Romance Audiobook Insiders for free to learn how to get love scenes in future. Link to join is in the description. Pause this and do that. It's okay, I'll wait. Signed up for free? Good, now back to the story.
They laid together for a time, until the sun had become red in the horizon, and then they reluctantly got out of their bed and dressed again. They walked together back to the community center and joined Dr. Odell there. Well, I wondered when you two would get around to showing up, she grinned. Congratulations, Micah. I had no idea you'd been mating this year. Now I know why. Yeah, well, he said with a blush, shrugging. Actually, this is more than just a casual thing, Dr. Odell. I intend to stay with Sylvie for life. Oh, that's so sweet, she gasped. I thought it might be something like that. I mean, why else would you two have taken such a risk to be together? That's very true, he agreed, brushing his knuckles along Sylvie's chin. And so far, most of that risk has been taken by her. I'll want to do everything I can to take some of that pressure away from her now that we can be together at last. Of course, Micah, she nodded. And has Sylvie told you all of my concerns? I've already begun to discreetly look for a place to hide the two of you away. There's always the possibility the baby wouldn't look different enough for anyone to know, Sylvie pointed out. No, sweetie. Don't you know what ligers look like? She'll look nothing at all like either breed, said Dr. Odell. It will only be obvious to anyone who sees her, once she's born. And you're sure of the gender? Micah asked curiously. Of course I am, she nodded. There's no doubt. Then if my mate agrees, said Micah with a huge grin from getting to say those words. I think we'd like to name our daughter Ilana, after you. How very sweet, she said with a blush. I really don't know what to say. You mentioned we'd be staying here now, said Sylvie then. Could you send for my mother and speak to her right away? She'll want to see that everything is okay. You understand, my brother David only recently has gone away. It may be hard for her to lose me so soon after that. I understand, Sylvie, she said. Don't worry. I'll show you two to a room, and then take the all-terrain out there just as soon as you're settled in. And remember, tiger form just as soon as you're there, young miss, and stay in it as much as you can from now on. We're going to make sure little Ilana can have her birthday. Hey there. Did you know that we've other hot romances like this that we want to release? But we need your help. Subscribing shows us that you're part of our journey and allows us to make more of these stories at a higher quality. So please, my queen, subscribe to the Romancely YouTube channel now. Thanks. Now back to your story.
Chapter 5. Micah opened the door when he heard a knock, and let Rose inside. She looked confused and just a little worried, but as soon as she saw her daughter in tiger form lounging on a bed, she was quick to run over and greet her. I really can't believe this is happening, she told them. First your brother ran off with a human, and now you decided upon someone other than a tiger, too. I just know your father is going to blame me for teaching you two to think for yourselves. What did you just say? Micah gasped. You knew where your son was all along? Oh no, I didn't say that, she defended herself. I've only just learned the truth about David from the good doctor as well. She says that she's intending to take the two of you to stay where they are. You'll end up getting studied a bit, of course. But that won't do you any lasting harm. Any more than it did me. Yeah, if you don't count the fact that your offspring don't want to mate with tigers, Sylvie pointed out so that both of them heard. They both laughed at the observation. Other than that, then, Rose had to agree. But I don't know how I'm going to explain all of this to your father. He's likely to send me packing next. Why don't you just tell him the truth? Micah wanted to know. Don't you think he would rather know? Know that his daughter is mated to a lion? Rose scoffed. Are you insane, Micah? Of course he won't want to know that. You'd know better than I would, Micah shrugged. Well, as interesting as this whole conversation has been, said Sylvie with a yawn, I'm suddenly quite tired. I think I'm going to take a nap. All right, then, said Rose with a smile. I'll come to see you in the morning. I'm going to see as much of you as I can before you're gone. Great. Talk to you later, then, she said, curling up onto her bed and laying down her head on her paws. Her two companions smiled indulgently in her direction. Talk to you later, Rose, said Micah. None of that, she said. From now on you get to call me Mom. Micah grinned. See you later, Mom. Did the doctor say anything about making love during the pregnancy? Asked Micah as he ran his fingers through Sylvie's fur later that night. Like this? She asked dubiously. I'd rather not. I prefer to think of our coming together to be more of a human thing. I agree. He smirked, and she smirked back because he was already in his human form, just as he usually was whenever they spent any time together. So you think I should go against doctor's orders and shift into my human form just so you can ravish me, sir? She asked with a decidedly huge grin. Oh, yeah, definitely, he told her, his grin even broader. She did use the words, as much as possible, right? I mean, you can't be a cat all the time. Sometimes the human in you just has to come out, don't you think? It didn't take her 3 seconds to shift, giggling all the way. The long red hair she had in human form got tangled in the pillow when she tried to roll over, but it was only a momentary pause as she pulled it free. You're so damned beautiful, Micah told her as her lips descended, so they wore a delicious smile as they found his. You're not so bad yourself, she mentioned. I suppose we'll probably make a very beautiful daughter, eh? Undoubtedly so. He grinned lazily as he watched her climb on top of him. What are you doing up there?
Oh no, it's about to get hot, but we can't put this on YouTube as they don't allow it. I'm sorry. But check the description of this video to join the Romance Audiobook Insiders for free and get details on how you can get the steamy scenes in future. Okay, back to the story.
The following morning, just as she'd promised, Rose came to see her daughter and Micah. They spent the morning together watching the television that had been in the room. Because they were usually out in the savannah, or in Mika's case the forest, watching the moving pictures on the screen was a relative novelty for them, so they were having lots of fun. That was, of course, until they heard a knock on the door. Thinking it was likely to be Dr. Odell, Micah cheerfully headed right over and opened the door. A fist landed right in his face, laying him flat on the ground. Damon, Rose exclaimed, running to Mika's side to make sure he was all right. What the heck is the matter with you? I take it you heard the news, father? Sylvie asked, still lying on the bed in her tiger form. I'll thank you never to harm my mate again. Your mate, he fumed. You actually call that lion your mate? Yes, I do, she insisted. And you'd better apologize, too. I'll do nothing of the sort. Now get up off of that bed. I'm taking you home where you belong, and that's all there is to it. Oh yes, there's a brilliant idea, Sylvie scoffed. And then I'll birth my daughter and all hell will break loose as soon as they see what she is. No, thank you. I'm perfectly content to remain here with Micah, and go to the other facility as soon as may be. Birthing Alana here is simply not an option. Wait, I didn't know you were pregnant, he replied. I just followed your mother here to find out where you were. And saw that lion. You mean to tell me that's what this is all about? You should simply get rid of it, you know. You are talking about my child, whom I already happen to love dearly because I love her father, Sylvie replied, sitting up on the bed to stare him down. Have some respect, sir. I'm not a cub any longer and my decision has already been made. So far, the conversation had been only between the two of them while mother and mate watched nervously from the floor, where Micah had finally gotten to a seated position and was trying to stop his nose from bleeding. Rose looked ready to punch her husband in the nose at the moment. Enough of this, she finally growled. I don't know what you two are saying to each other, but what's done is done. Mika's a part of our family now, whether you like it or not, Damon. And Sylvie is going with her mate to a safe place. It's all right, Damon. She'll be with her brother. It'll be safe there. You were going to let them send her away without even telling me, he said, his tone accusatory. I may not like what she's done, Rose, but she's still my little cub. I wish she wasn't going anywhere. I wish she could remain a cub forever. But I know she can't, and I'm going to have to let her go. Rose got to her feet and took the weeping man into her arms. It'll be all right, she consoled him. Besides, all our late-night antics seem to have paid off. My own cub isn't much farther along than Sylvie's. Our nest won't be empty for long. Mother, you're having a cub as well? Gasped Sylvie, now in human form, as she stepped over to turn off the television. She couldn't work the knobs using paws. I am, she said proudly. And this one is going to mate with a tiger, guaranteed. Of course it is, Sylvie smirked, though in her heart she had a seed of doubt. Damon extended a hand to help Micah to his feet, and the younger male took it reluctantly. Sorry, son, I had no idea you two were in love, he said gruffly. I thought maybe it was just some sort of one-night thing, and Rose just wasn't telling me about it. But when a male answered the door, well, I suppose any father would do the same. I know I would, Micah grinned, but grimaced with pain because of it. Maybe you should go show your nose to the doctor, Damon suggested ruefully. Yes, I think so too, he agreed. At the very least, she'll have some ice for it. And maybe a bit of pain root. I'll take you there, then, he said. Give these two females time to get all gushy about their babies without us. Good idea, he smirked, wincing again. You sure like to smile a lot for a lion, don't you? Asked Damon as the two men headed for the door. Well, that went surprisingly well, Rose commented dryly. I think my father just kidnapped my mate, said Sylvie worriedly. You don't think he's taken him off to finish the job, do you? Of course not, Rose protested. Don't be silly. I don't doubt he's going to have a talk with him, mind you, but I don't think he intends to rough him up anymore. I wish we could go to the commissary for some ice cream, Sylvie sighed. But the less people see of me, the better it will be. I don't want any trouble before Micah and I manage to make our escape. Maybe I could buy some and bring it back here, Rose suggested. Remember, you're not the only one who is having cravings. No, I guess I'm not, she agreed, giving her mother a hug. I'll be back in a flash, said Rose happily, and she, too, went out the door. I never did finish reading that novel, Sylvie said with a sigh, and remained in her human form so she could curl up with the book and wait for somebody to return. It took about 4 more days to make all the arrangements to have Micah and Sylvie moved. On the day the trucks came, there were several shifters gathered who stood gaping at the couple as they walked out together, side by side, in their feline forms. Look at that, shouted a young male tiger. A tiger with a lion. And, isn't she the king's daughter? Some princess she's turned out to be. Leona stepped to the front, marching boldly up to Sylvie with a scowl on her face. You ignorant kitten. Micah was meant for one of us to mate, and now you've stolen him away. All that leaves us with is that imbecile Harold and his equally stupid brother Harvey. I simply can't abide either one of them. I may even have to move to a different pride. The catty female next moved as if to kick Sylvie, but Micah roared and moved between the foot and his mate, glaring at her. Gasping in surprise, she quickly stepped away. You always were too impulsive anyway. Micah, she called after him as the pair continued on their way toward the transport truck. It's probably a good thing I didn't become your mate, if she's your type. You absolutely disgust me. Glad we'll be seeing the last of her. At any rate, Sylvie commented once they were in the pen, which was connected to the back of a truck. They had been instructed to remain in their cat forms for the duration of the trip. That way, the drivers would be unable to recognize them in human form once they were out in the community. They were being left by these men at a zoo, but once they were gone, the two had been instructed to become humans and meet a different driver who would take them to their new home. I realize all these precautions may seem unnecessary, but trust me, you'll be better off with too much caution than not enough, Dr. Odell insisted. The woman who will be following your pregnancy is very good, Sylvie. I have no worries that she'll take good care of you. I wish I could meet little Alana sometime. You never know, Sylvie had replied. Some of us shifters can live for a very long time. One more thing, Micah said then. I need to be certain the elders get fed. I'm the only one who has been bringing them regular meals, and they are probably overdue for another meal now. You know they won't accept human food, but maybe they'll take a freshly slaughtered buffalo, and our sincerest wishes for their continued existence? I'll take care of it myself, Dr. Odell had agreed. And so the couple had very little reservations now that they were ensconced together in the cage. Nobody knew about the baby, at least as far as they knew, and all the drivers knew was that they were transporting a pair of cats who seemed to get along. All was currently right with the world. Sylvie had no illusions that it would stay that way. They still had a long road ahead just to reach her brother, and even then they were probably on borrowed time before Alana's existence became known. And if it did, there was no doubt that the collectors would be clamoring to get to her. She hoped this place they were going had some pretty tight security, or she couldn't vouch for their chances of keeping their daughter safe. The scenery going past the windows changed from jungle trees to open lands, and finally houses began to dot the landscape. Finally, they came upon a town, and buildings steadily grew taller around them. Then they came to a large metal gate, and the sign above it read, City Zoo. Do you think the other animals will recognize what we are? Sylvie asked worriedly. I have heard that some of them hate shifters. Not to worry. They're putting us into a holding area. Quarantine, zoo director's idea, since he never intended for us to stay here in the first place. Should make it much easier to simply transform and walk out of here. Sylvie simply nodded. When the drivers came and brought them out, they dutifully followed them into the entrance and found places to lay down inside the pen. Meat had been freshly laid out for their arrival, but Micah refused to touch it until Sylvie had her fill. Would you look at that? Said one driver to the other. A most unusual pair. Yes, they are, he agreed. I wonder how those two wandered into shifter territory to begin with, and why they were together when they did. Amazing. Too bad we aren't supposed to tell anybody about this, said the first driver. This would make an interesting news article, for sure. Maybe just a picture or two, smirked the other, and they saw a flash of light. Micah sat up in alarm. Before he had to do anything, however, the zookeeper stepped in. I'll take that camera, sir. We can't have this sort of thing leaking out to the press as yet. I'm sure this will be ample compensation for your consideration. He handed the two men a briefcase full of money, which they happily took, scurrying quickly out the door. The truck drove away. If you two will transform, I've a few questions I wouldn't mind you answering before your car arrives, said the man then. Questions, sir? Asked Micah as he got to his feet. Yes, Micah, he nodded. The good doctor wouldn't tell me much about the situation other than that a lion and a tiger wished to be together. And it was too difficult for you to do it there on the preserve. It just seems to me that there might be a piece missing from that puzzle. I don't understand what it is you're asking, sir, Micah hedged. Don't play dumb with me. Now, I know that it's never happened before. But even I can see by looking at her that your female is pregnant, the man insisted. I work with animals all the time. I'd be a fool not to notice something like that. But I'm not that far along, Sylvie protested, and then covered her mouth with a little frown. She cast Micah a look of apology. I'm sorry, sir, we're not at liberty to discuss this with anyone, Micah explained. We've been earmarked for private research, as I'm sure you must know. Have you got any idea how much longer it will take for the car to arrive? Sorry, son, but there's not going to be any car, the zookeeper said then. You're both going to stay right here in this zoo until that cub is born. I'm sure it will go for top dollar on the open market. And as for you two, you'd better comply with my wishes, especially you, Lion. Because I don't need to keep you in order to get what I want. I could sell you on the market tomorrow if I wanted to. Just remember that. You can't do that, Sylvie protested. What about my brother? What about our safe haven? I'm not going to just let you steal our dream. Hush, Sylvie. Do as he says for now. I'm sure we can think of a way out of this somehow. I hope. Of course, you'll understand when I put each of you into the proper exhibits. For now, the zookeeper went on. People are far too curious, and they might figure out much too easily that the zoo is about to have a liger cub if I keep you caged together. No, Micah to the lions, and Sylvie to the tiger cage. The way it's supposed to be. Micah! No, Sylvie wailed as the man stepped over and slipped a collar onto her neck. Now, back to tiger form, if you please, he said. And I'll expect to find you still here when I return, Micah. Don't make me have to find you. I'll be waiting, sir, he replied acidly. Sylvie struggled the whole way as he dragged her to a cage entrance and pushed her inside. Run along now, Sylvie. And I don't think I need to tell you what will happen if you shift while you're in there. No, she thought, he didn't need to tell her at all.
Chapter 6. Micah paced in the lion's den, uncomfortably aware of exactly how many days had passed since he and Sylvie had arrived. He'd been keeping track by making crude scratch marks on the den wall with his claws. The other lions had tried to pick on him when he first arrived, of course, but he predominantly kept to himself, which took all the fun out of it for them. He hadn't been able to shift into his human form for weeks now, and he was beginning to feel uncomfortably aware of it. He desperately wanted to stretch his bones literally. But of course, he'd probably just get mauled or eaten for his efforts, so of course he had to refrain. She must be very near her time now, Micah thought to the female lion who had come to stand by his side. She inquired, somewhat miffed. Who is she? My mate, of course, he answered testily. She was over a month along when they brought us here. They kept her and put her somewhere else. Why are you hedging? She asked suspiciously. No lion female would have been separated from the others over a simple pregnancy. What aren't you telling me? It's really none of your concern, he insisted. Why are you not like the others here, who prefer to leave me alone? I'm secretly a shifter, she explained. How could that be? I would have felt you. So you are a shifter, then? I knew it. It's not as though I tried to hide it, he scoffed. Most of them just aren't smart enough to notice. I commend you for your detective work. Your mate isn't here. Do you need another? Never. I see, she replied, miffed. How very unusual. Is that a shifter thing? Sometimes, he said. It's more of a human thing. Remember, a shifter is part of both halves. Yes, I suppose that's true. Isn't it hard reconciling the two parts? Very, he agreed. I wish I could figure a way out of here. A way to go and see Sylvie. Sylvie? Never say you're talking about that tigress who was in the infirmary while I was there yesterday? No wonder you didn't explain. Well, good luck with that. Wait, you must know some way I could get to go to the infirmary too. Can't you help a fellow out? Suddenly, she turned and slashed her claw viciously down his eye. He roared in agony as she turned and strode back up the hill, her tail held high in the air. Within the hour, the animal caretakers captured him and brought him out, bringing him exactly where he wanted to be. Sylvie was lying in tiger form on a nearby bed, and tiny Alana was nursing at her side. Elation filled him at the sight of his mate and daughter, and he wanted to rush over to the bed and take them into his arms. However, the vet had other plans. So far, he hadn't been knocked out because the caretaker knew he was a shifter. The vet, however, was not about to take any chances, human reasoning or not. He knocked him out. When he woke later, there was a dressing over his mangled eye, and it was throbbing. "Oh, my aching head," he groaned. "Do you think my bandage would morph with me if I change?" "I doubt it," Sylvie told him. "So what's your brilliant plan, Micah? You know he could come and take our daughter any time now that she's been born. You know we've got to get out of here now. Kitten, I'm all drugged up, and you've only just given birth. I don't think we could move fast enough to escape right now. We go as cats, and we go right now. It's dark out, and they've all gone to sleep. We'd only have to contend with the guards at the gate, and they could be easily subdued. You're right, of course, but you'll have to unhook my four first. Once we reach the gates and get free, we must become humans. Wrap Alana so that she is completely covered, and I will hold her in my teeth until we get out." "You're in no condition to do anything of the sort," Sylvie protested. "I'm her mother. It's my job to carry her. Now hold still. I'll only be human long enough to get the thing out, and then we will go." Sylvie morphed and swiftly grabbed one of the blankets that hadn't been used to wipe up the mess of her birthing, wrapping Alana into it like a neat little package. Then she came over and pulled the four out of the back of Micah's neck. She saw a case full of pain meds and antibiotics beside another bag and some needles, and pointed it out to him. "If I put those all into the duffel there, do you think you can carry it?" she asked. "You're going to need those things wherever we end up." Micah nodded his agreement as he got slowly to his feet. Sylvie grabbed the items she'd already noticed, and found a few other goodies like bandages and another blanket besides. She quickly stuffed the bag so that it was full but relatively lightweight, and turned to her mate again. "You need to move faster than that, Micah," she scolded. "We only have the element of surprise. If you screw that up, we'll never get away. Now let's go." Sylvie was a tiger again really quickly, and Alana was soon grabbed by the scruff of her neck beneath the blanket she wore. She mewled a protest, but that was about it. She was still too worn out from her entry to the world for more. Admiring the view momentarily with his good eye, Micah deftly latched onto the handle at the middle of the bag and lifted. It was a little noticeable since it was almost half his size, but he managed to get it out the door and keep up with the furiously rushing Sylvie anyway. He was in complete agreement with her idea. Run for it. Usually, there were 2 guards at the gate and 1 night watchman that made his rounds all through the zoo. They had no idea of the watchman's whereabouts, but they knew exactly where to find the guards. They were inside the gatehouse playing cards. But in order to open the gate, they would have to go in there as well. "I can turn human and distract them," suggested Sylvie. "Are you kidding? What if your plan backfires? And you've only just had a baby. They could seriously hurt you if no, Sylvie. I can't let you do it. Have you got a better idea?" "No," he admitted in defeat. "You know that I don't." "End of discussion, then," she replied as she set Alana beside the gate. "I'll go in there and open the damned gate. Be ready to bring Alana out. I'll get the bag if I can manage it." Again, all Micah could do was nod in agreement. He had to admire Sylvie's courage and quick thinking. Then again, if he wasn't high as a kite, he might have done more himself. When the gate swung open, he did not hesitate to grab Alana and run out. Then it clanged shut again. Micah stopped dead in his tracks, staring back at the closed gate. Soon, it swung open a second time, and Sylvie came running out with the duffel, still in her human form. He transformed as well so that all the gatekeepers could see were a human couple running away. Of course, they still would call the authorities, and they had a good description of Sylvie, too. This had really bad written all over it. We should head towards the waterway, Sylvie suggested. We could cross to the other side. They'll be looking on this side first. It would buy us some time. She stopped to sniff the air. That way, she added, and started to walk without waiting for an answer. Micah simply followed her. He was tired and hurting, and he just wanted to rest. But he kept his legs moving until they'd finally reached the small dock a few blocks away. Sylvie helped him into the little boat while he still held Ilana, and then she got into it after him. They've left the key in, Micah said. Should I turn it on? No, we need to paddle out a bit. The sound could alert the people to our presence, she said. Where did you learn all this stuff, anyway? Micah asked her. Human books, silly, she said, tapping the side of her head with a finger. Oh yeah, he said, smirking. It made his head hurt. Last time his head hurt was when Damon had punched him, he thought with a bit of sadness. He'd far rather endure that pain again than go through all of this. There's got to be some way we can discover my brother's location, Sylvie continued as she began to row them steadily away from the dock. If only we could contact Dr. Odell. We need to find a phone book and phone somehow, he agreed. Maybe in a library? Not at midnight, though, Sylvie said. First, we need to find someplace to rest. Have I ever told you how much I admire you, kitten? Micah asked softly, and he realized the world was spinning. I think I'm going to dash. He slumped backward in his seat, and Sylvie quickly took Ilana out of his arms and laid her on the floor so she could continue to row. She took time only to make sure he still had a pulse, then decided they'd gone far enough to turn the key. She did, and the boat sprang to life. She swept up the waterway at top speed, putting a few miles behind them before stopping at a dock on the far side. Micah had opened his eyes again by then. He was watching her with a bemused look on his face. Where are we? I'm not exactly sure, but I spotted an old shack a bit further in over there, she said, pointing to it. With any luck, it may be empty. Let's hope so, said Micah. I could really use some of that painkiller, and probably the antibiotic as well, once I figure out how to put the 4 in. Also, I'm sure these doses are for cats, so you'll have to shift for it. I'll take Ilana and the duffel. You just get yourself over to the shack. Okay? Sure, he said, his words slurred. If you're not there by the time I get there, I'll set both down and come help you, she added tiredly. I'll get there if it kills me, Micah replied. Sylvie hurried over to the shack and knocked on the door. Thankfully, there was no answer. She set Ilana and the duffel bag down inside, and quickly returned for Micah. He was still determinedly dragging himself there, but he hadn't even gotten halfway. With her shoulder and some sheer willpower, the two of them quickly got to the shack and went inside, closing the door behind them. Micah, I need you to turn. Do you think you can do that? She asked, trying to make sure he could still hear her. He seemed pretty out of it. He didn't respond, and he didn't turn either. Come on, Micah. I can't help you if you don't help yourself. I might do more harm than good. Sylvie waited about 10 minutes before she realized he wasn't waking up. He needed some medicine in him, and he needed it right then. With no better idea what to do, she managed to insert the rather large 4 into his arm and started to drip smaller doses than it said on the bottle into him just to get things started. Eventually, she brought Ilana with her on the blanket and dozed off, and when she woke later she found that he was awake and seemed more lucid. I must have passed out? He inquired. You did, she smiled. I was a bit scared for a few minutes there. I think the pain meds helped, but we really need to get the full dose of antibiotic going, he replied. Are you up for doing it the right way? Yeah, she nodded. Finally situated for the night, the three dozed off yet again, intending to move on once they'd rested so that no one would discover them there. After all, the stolen boat was parked right off the shore here. Once they figured out they'd crossed the water, it would be easy enough to look for them here. It was almost dawn when Sylvie shook Micah awake. "Time to go," she told him. "It's too dangerous to remain here any longer." Nodding his agreement, Micah winced as Sylvie pulled out the 4 and buried the needle in a plant pot. It wouldn't do to leave it in plain sight, and hopefully no one would think to look for it in there. She didn't want to bring it along. "Ready?" Micah asked. He picked up Ilana and the pair of them began to walk. Micah had found an old hat in the shack, and he was now using it to cover his face a bit, hiding the stitches from casual view. They walked out onto the open road and made their way to a small restaurant up the way. Looking inside, they found it had a phone book, so they used it to look up the number of the preserve. Since they didn't have any money, they wouldn't be able to call directly, so the call had to be made some other way. They spotted a man with a cell phone and asked if they could borrow it, and got the operator for the preserve on the 3rd ring. "This had better be important," she grumbled. "Meredith, it's Micah," he said. "We need to talk to Dr. Odell right away." "Micah? I thought you were dead." "That must be what the zookeeper told you," he frowned. "He's kept us prisoner for almost 2 months waiting for Ilana to be born. The 3 of us just escaped." "Hold on right there, Micah," she gasped. "She's walking by right now." "Did you say Micah?" The doctor gasped, and she was on the phone in an instant. "Micah? Where are you? What's happened? They told us your truck crashed and you'd all been killed." "We were kidnapped by the zookeeper," he repeated. "We've only just escaped, and we need to get someplace safe with a quickness. Sylvie has only just birthed Ilana, and I've been badly injured, so we pretty much all need medical attention. Do you think you could escape your duties for the day and come help us out? I don't know who else to trust." "Tell me where you are," she said. No, we can't stay here. People are starting to stare," he said. "We'll make our way to the North Bridge and hide there." "All right, I can't come myself," she said. "I'll send David to you. Sylvie will know her own brother. He'll help you. He's been working with a resistance movement trying to save shifters from the collectors since he got there. You'll be safe with him, I promise." "Okay. We'll let you know when everything's sorted out," said Micah. "Thank you, Doctor. You're a good friend." "Of course," she said. "Just hurry to the bridge. I'll take care of the rest." They moved quickly through the streets and made their way to the bridge they could see in the distance. Though they were both tired and becoming hungry as well, neither Micah nor Sylvie had any desire to rest until they'd reached their destination almost an hour later. There had been several unexpected twists and turns along the road, making what seemed like a nearby object somewhat further off. But in the end, they made it there without incident. However, when they got there, they saw that a large truck was waiting that looked suspiciously like the one that had taken them to the zoo before. Panic gripped Sylvie as she held out a hand to stop Micah before they drew to close. "What do you think?" she asked worriedly. "I think somebody must have told them we were coming here," he sighed. "But I'd hate to think it was either of the women or your brother who was involved. Do you think there's a tap on the line?" "I don't know, but either way, we can't possibly go there, and we can't risk trying to call Dr. Odell again," Sylvie said. But even as she said this, a shout went up, and several men began to run towards them, guns drawn. "Oh no! What do we do, Micah?" "Don't move," he said, frozen in place himself. "It's only Ilana they're after. They might easily kill one or both of us. We're going to have to do what they say for now." "But Micah, they'll take our cub," she hissed angrily. They stood reticently as the men grabbed their arms and put them behind their backs, cuffing each of them. Then they put strange collars around each of their necks. These collars are equipped with a small explosive device, explained one of the men as he grabbed Alana and clamped one on her as well. If you attempt to escape, you won't get very far before you'll wish you hadn't. Sick bastards, Sylvie growled. Also, they won't grow if you attempt to shift, he added with a smirk. You would choke yourself if you tried. Now, be a nice couple of kitties and come along with us. We've got big plans for the three of you. Us too, Micah asked uncertainly. A breeding pair should be pretty useful for making a few more ligers. Don't you agree? He smirked. Oh no, you two are most definitely not going anywhere. How do you know about all of this? Sylvie wanted to know. You've caught us now anyway. It won't hurt for you to explain. An informant, of course, he said. That's all you need to know. Now move along. They were herded over to the large truck and shoved into the back. Alana was given back, but their hands were left tied so that they couldn't hold her as the truck began to jostle around. In a desperate attempt to keep her baby from rolling around on the floor, Sylvie fell sideways and caught her with one of her legs instead. Where are they taking us? She asked nervously. I don't know, Micah told her. I'm not sure I want to know. Suddenly, the truck lurched to a stop to the sound of gunfire. The unmistakable sound of a deflating tire hissed loudly, and then shouting. The back doors swung open, and a desperate-looking man stared in at them. Dampening field, he shouted. Move now. Your collars won't explode unless this thing runs out of juice. Let's go. David? Thank goodness. Sylvie gasped as he cut the ties binding her hands. She immediately grabbed Alana and held her close, trying to soothe her. Thank me later, he yelled. Those men won't be subdued for long. Move, 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 move. They booked over to a van along with David and 3 other men who had attacked, and they all got inside. Sylvie noticed the van was black and unmarked, not very good traits for it during daylight as it was now. The oversight was remedied when, a few blocks away, David and their little family jumped out of the van and into a car, and he brought the dampener along with him. This thing needs to be plugged in within 20 minutes, he warned them. Otherwise, this will be a pretty short-lived rescue. Remove Alana's collar first when we arrive, Micah told him. She is much more important than either of us. I heard that you were an honorable lion, David said appreciatively. Glad to know that the rumors are true. When we get wherever we're going, how safe are we likely to be? Sylvie wanted to know. We only have 5 more safe houses that haven't been compromised, David explained. However, once we've exhausted them, we do have another idea. We'll eventually take you along with us on a boat. If we can manage to reach it, we're going to leave India behind for good. We won't know the destination until we're aboard. We can't afford to inadvertently tell the person who's been betraying us anything useful. How easy is it to get the collars off? Asked Micah stoically. Don't worry, I don't intend to blow your head off, David replied. I'm actually getting pretty good at this. You have pretty good odds that you might survive.
Chapter 7. They made it to the outlet with 3 minutes to spare, but that was just the beginning of the stress they had to endure over the next few hours. When all 3 of them were safe at last, Micah finally breathed a sigh of relief. Sylvie had refused to go second, so he'd had to endure the stress of waiting for her as he held their daughter in his arms. She's shifted to human? He asked incredulously. I didn't think they did that for at least a couple of weeks. You're right, mostly they don't, said David. But there are exceptions to every rule. Alana must be a very smart cub. Now, if only we could convince her to stay in that form, it would be a whole lot easier for us to keep the 3 of you from being discovered. Okay, quiet down a moment. We've come to the important part. Reba, get the next depressor ready, please. Detonation of the device could occur any time within 30 seconds of its removal, as Micah had already been told twice, once for his daughters and once for his. The depressor was a canister into which the collar was immediately thrown and sealed inside of so that its blast would be contained and muffled. It was still advisable to throw it out of the area with a quickness, but at least nobody's head would get blown off. "Ready," said David in a calm manner that clearly showed the degree of his nervousness. "Love, I don't want you anywhere near this, you know that." "Micah, move your baby away." "What is it?" Micah asked, picking up a subtle difference in tone this time. "I'm not sure how long the timer will last," he admitted. "Just please, move back. I don't want anyone hurt any more than you do, but we obviously can't leave it on either." "Sylvie, I love you with all my heart," said Micah as tears sprang up into his eyes. She was holding her breath, but now she let it out so she could answer. "I'll be fine. Stop worrying and move it already. I'd just as soon have this done, one way or another." Micah moved several feet away. David and Sylvie each held their breath as he pulled the unit free and threw it into the depressor. The lid was not fully sealed when the bomb went off, taking one of his fingers and his thumb with it when the lid flew off. He fell forward on top of his sister to shield her from taking any part of the blast. "Reba?" Sylvie gasped. "He's injured." Quickly, Reba and another man moved in, pulling David free of Sylvie's body and getting him onto his back. Sylvie moved for the pack with the antibiotics and pain meds in it, deftly preparing an IV despite her shaking hands. "We need a tourniquet, now," Reba shouted. "He's bleeding way too much. Boris, get a blood type and find someone, now." Sylvie grabbed the end of her shirt and ripped, making a long strip. She did it again, tied the two pieces together, and then swiftly tied it around her brother's arm. "We need a stick or something," she said as she held the fabric in place. Reba grabbed a nearby tree branch and broke a pieces off, handing it to Sylvie. Using it, she was able to twist the tourniquet tight and tie it into place. She looked inside the back and found the stitch kit. It only had 4 strands. "This isn't going to work," she told Reba worriedly. "Do you have any thread? A needle of some kind? Anything? Boris? Would you go as calmly as you can to the little corner store and buy me a sewing kit?" said Reba. "We'll start off with these and hopefully you won't take long on it," he said briskly as he headed for the door. "He's definitely going to need some of this antibiotic," said Sylvie, her voice catching. "Why don't we hold off on that until we've got the bleeding stopped?" said Reba, and she sounded equally as emotional. "How can you two stay so calm?" Micah asked incredulously as he watched them. "That's your brother, and your lover. Speeding up his heart isn't going to slow down his bleeding," Reba pointed out. David, who had been lying there as still and stoic as was possible in his current condition, ungritted his teeth long enough to reply as well. "I'm proud of you both," he managed to tell them. "Always." The effort must have been too much, and he closed his eyes, his body ceasing to struggle. "He's not passed out," Reba said. "I'm surprised he lasted as long as he did. You open prep, I'll stitch, okay Sylvie?" "Yes," she nodded. "For all that I put up a brave effort, I really have no idea what I'm doing." "By all means, do what you do." Boris showed up just as Reba tied the 4th stitch into place. "I brought whiskey as well," he announced. "Good. You know what to do with it," she said. He poured some over the wound, then woke David up and poured some down his throat. He gulped it greedily, fully intending to pass back out again with its help. "I have some pain med for him," Sylvie said then, and she pulled up some into a needle and put it directly into his hand. "I found his finger if you want to try to put it on," said one of the other men uncertainly. "I don't know how to do that," Reba protested. "But keep it anyway. Maybe he'll want a souvenir." "Ew, some souvenir," Micah shuddered. "Micah, take the baby indoors," Sylvie told him. "She doesn't need to be out here for this." "Good luck then," he said with a nod, and he brought her inside. "What's going on out there?" asked one of the men there. David blew off a couple of his fingers. "They're out there trying to save his life." "I've got medical training," said another man. "I should go help." "Good man," Micah said as he hurried outside. "He could use all the help he can get." "Well, I've got Micah and Alana and David in their beds resting. Now how do I convince you to do the same, Miss Sylvie?" Reba asked sternly. "I may not have personally given birth to a baby as yet, but I imagine pushing another person out of your body must be some pretty exhausting work." "But how can I rest knowing you've just been saddled with so much extra work all of a sudden?" Sylvie sighed. "At least let me help you finish making the meal or something." "I'd feel useless if I went to lay down right now." "All right, you can stay," she grumbled. "But only for a little while. So, how did you and my brother meet, anyway?" Sylvie asked her as she settled in a nearby chair and helped knead the bread dough. "Through Dr. Odell, of course," she smiled. "I would sometimes come help her out with some of her patients, and I told her we were looking for another shifter who could be of help to our cause. She said she knew just the guy. When we first met about a year ago, I had no idea that he and I would ever become lovers. But the more often I snuck him out, or came in to speak with him, the more obvious it was that there was a lot more going on than just a simple business arrangement." "So my brother's been helping you out that long?" she gasped. "But last year, he wasn't even fully an adult until winter. He was mostly grown when we first met, enough so that it wasn't noticeable that he had a couple months left to reach 1 year," she shrugged. "Talk about dating younger men, right? But now that he's an adult, it'll be forever before he gets old, much longer than it's going to take me. I worry that he's going to dump me for some young tigress someday." "Or a lioness," Sylvie smirked. "Thanks, now I feel better," she said. "You can take the shifter out of the forest, but you can't take the proclivities out of a male," said Sylvie sagely. "I can only reassure you that my brother is a very loyal sort. If he's truly attached, it would take something monumental to get him to let go." "Yes, tenacity does seem to be a shared trait with you too," she nodded. "And anyway, we're talking about a lot of years before I'd be that old. Who knows? By then I might want him to go plow somebody who can still keep up." Sylvie chuckled at the visuals these words brought to mind. "All right, the food is done and you're practically passing out," Reba said then. "Now why don't you go lie down and feed Alana? I'm sure she'll be hoping for a meal by now. I'll take care of everything else from here." "Thanks for everything, Reba," Sylvie smiled. "You really are an awesome human." "You're very welcome," she said. A few hours later, after they'd all rested up a while, Reba came to see if Micah or Sylvie wanted anything to eat. "Boris went out and caught a deer, and we finally got it prepped if you're interested." "That sounds divine," said Sylvie as she sat up in the bed. "Are you feeling well enough to eat, Micah? Or would you like us to make you some soup?" "My head really hurts," he sighed. "I hate to seem less than my best, but the soup sounds like it would be much easier to handle." "It's not a problem," Reba reassured him. "In fact, I already did it just in case." "Reba, you're such an angel," Sylvie said appreciatively as she produced the huge bowl of food she'd brought for him. "That should be just the thing. Well, now, I think it may be time for this little one to have a proper bath," Reba said then, bending to lift the still human-shaped Alana up into her arms. "Maybe give Mom and Dad a bit of alone time into the bargain, eh?" "Not too much, though, Sylvie. Your body's still got to heal." Sylvie blushed when she heard this. Since she and Micah had been kept apart at the zoo, and they'd only just managed to rest after their escape, alone time wasn't something that they'd been able to enjoy for a while. As Reba left the bedroom again, the two smirked and looked at each other. "Those stitches may need to come out tomorrow," said Sylvie as she examined Mika's face more closely, tracing her fingers over the prickles. "It's only been 2 days," he said. "It might be better if we waited another." All right, one more day then, she nodded. I just don't want to leave them in too long or they might stick and be harder to get out. I had to get stitches once and my mother waited over a week. It was really annoying and itchy, too. And what did you get stitched, my beauty? He asked huskily as he drew her into his arms. My calf, she said, her eyes hooding as he began to kiss the side of her neck. David was playing too rough when I was only 4 months old. She said he should know better, and he was always making sure to watch out for me ever since. Just like he did earlier, Micah nodded. I believe that your brother would have willingly died to keep you safe. I know that he would, she agreed. And I would do the same for him, if need be. I think that may be the human in us, don't you? Does it matter? He smirked. It's wonderful either way. Do you think you would be too sore if I were to take you, kitten? We could simply hold each other instead. If you're gently, we could at least give it a try, she said as she began to purr. I've missed you so much, Micah. You have no idea what it was like, being kept all alone for 2 whole months when you're used to people around you all the time. And right after I'd finally, officially made you mine. How about an official remake, then? He grinned. He had pulled her so close to him that now she was half sitting and half laying across his lap. Now he repositioned her so that she was straddling his hips, making her giggle. If you're up there, it'll be easier for you to be sure I won't get too rough with you. Admit it, you're just a lazy lion, she smirked. Fine, I'm a lazy lion, he admitted. Besides, my head hurts, and your bottom hurts, so it makes much more sense. It'd make even more sense if we took off our clothes, Sylvie reminded him.
Hi there. Unfortunately, we've had to take this steamy scene out as it's against YouTube's terms of service. If you don't want to miss out on love scenes in future stories, check the description and join the Romance Audiobook Insiders for free for more info. Okay, back to the story.
About 3 weeks later, Alana's human fur resembled that of a 2-year-old, and she was steadily learning how to talk. She was curious about everything, and was constantly asking everyone around her what things were called. Her hair had grown in golden toned, like Mika's, which was no surprise to anyone. So far, the entire group of about 20 people, mostly males, had been forced to move only once, about a week ago, when it seemed like the collectors were getting too close to discovering where they were hiding. Here, they were a bit farther into the countryside, so hopefully they were less exposed. Still, everyone was starting to grow restless. They all wanted to be able to hop into a boat and get away from all this trouble. The only thing that was holding them back was finding a way to pay for their passage. Reba had been steadily paying off a captain over the last 6 months, and now the last payment was finally about to be made. If only they could manage to come up with the cash with which to do it. A nearby farm has put out a call for migrant workers to come and help with the olive harvest, Reba explained. They were very willing to allow our men to participate, but they're waiting about another week before they feel it's time. So we need to lay low here for just a little while longer. I'd hate to lose out on that income. I'm worried, though, Sylvie sighed. It's getting difficult to keep Alana inside. She snuck out just last night and shifted into her cat form. She doesn't understand yet why she needs to refrain. Yes, I know, Reba agreed. Fortunately, the ship captain has no interest in your shifting abilities, and the group will have the boat to ourselves except for him. We should be amply able to send the message home to the little imp by the time we reach our destination. Someplace far off, then? Sylvie nodded. Yes, far enough, she agreed. You know I won't tell you. It's too big of a risk that someone else could somehow be listening. I agree, totally, Sylvie nodded. Shall we start on the meal for the night? Yes, she said. I believe the males brought down a few chital for us to cut up. I'll have mine roasted, of course. Wonderful, Sylvie smiled. I like chital meat. Let's get started. After the week had passed, The men were generally gone for most of the day during the 2-week-long job. Micah picked so many olives that his fingertips tasted of their juices. Sylvie loved to tease him by sucking on them, making him laugh. "If you like olives so much, perhaps wherever we're going we could plant an orchard of our own," he teased her. I might actually like that," she said thoughtfully. "What are olives?" Alana wanted to know. "Here. I have one right here in my pocket." "My love," said Micah as he fished one out. "Of course. This is right off the plant, but people process these and flavor them sometimes as well." "Bitter," she complained as she spit out the little bite she'd taken. "Do you have any meat instead?" Sylvie watched them, marveling at how quickly Alana had grasped the concept of speech. She was now only 5 weeks old, and she was already acting like a cub in her 3rd month. She was almost as big as one, too. How much bigger than them was Alana likely to grow? Her human form would, of course, be of a larger woman, just as most of the other shifters. Even Leona's bone structure was larger despite her incessant attempts to stay slim. But it was a known fact that ligers could grow quite a bit larger than their parents, and Sylvie wondered how that was going to affect Alana's human form. Of course, since there was no other known shifting liger to compare Alana to, there was no way of knowing the answer until about 6 to 8 months from now. By then, it should be readily apparent whether they wanted it to be or not. "What are you frowning over, Sylvie?" Micah wanted to know. "The future, I suppose," she admitted. "I just hope Alana's size won't be causing the group any trouble once she's reached her full potential." "You worry too much, Sylvie," he told her. "No matter what happens, we're just going to have to take everything as it comes. You know that. I'm a mother, of course I worry," she scoffed. "It's in the job description. Too bad my own mother isn't going to get to see any of us again before we set sail." Well, the money had already been wired. "We've only 3 days more of picking to do. And then our biggest worry is going to be how to reach the boat," said Micah as he ate an olive of his own. "I'd say your mother would be glad to know that much at least. If only there was a way we could let her know." "We can't risk contacting Dr. Odell," Sylvie reminded him. "At least, not using the phone at the preserve. But I wonder, what if we sent in a note instead?" "Do you think Reba would be willing to do a day's work with the good doctor someday soon?" asked Micah. "We might even be able to inform her by word of mouth." "That's a great idea," Sylvie agreed. "I'll have to ask her about it right away. I wonder if she could pass off a picture of Alana to my parents so they can see what she looks like. It would be so great if they could at least see her one time." "Well, go talk to Reba then, my dear," Micah suggested. "You'll never stop worrying about all this until you at least try."
Chapter 8. Reba stepped back out of Dr. Odell's office at the end of the 8-hour shift she'd given her and headed for her car, because she knew it was highly likely that she was being watched. She would not return to the shifters that night, but would go to her sister's home instead. Sure enough, she saw the lights of a van kick on not long after she'd started to drive, and its driver kept a healthy distance behind her as he followed. She confirmed this and also made sure the driver knew of her awareness by making 3 right turns and then coming back out onto the road. She didn't shake him, whoever he was. Now that their passage had been fully paid, it was more nerve-wracking than ever, waiting until they could leave the following day. The last thing she wanted was for this jerk to prevent her from meeting up with the others, but she was not about to lead the guy to them either. She would rather let them leave than risk endangering them all. Such morbid thoughts weren't much use to her. She knew how miserable she'd be if that ever happened. She wasn't going to let it. As soon as she pulled up at her sister's place, she walked inside and found her waiting for her. They looked very much alike, and when Rachel put on her jacket and took her keys out of her hand, both women were certain that the driver would never pick up on the switch. He was going to follow her sister, giving her the chance she needed to drive away in a different car in another direction. She had already arranged with the others to meet them to the south, near the boat. Getting there wasn't her problem. She just needed to do it without being followed. She hoped that her sister's plan would be enough. Reba watched surreptitiously out the window for a few minutes after she saw the van following her sister. She wanted to be certain another vehicle hadn't also been following, and when she saw another van circle the block a couple times, she was glad she did. When that vehicle also disappeared from view, she left soon afterwards, deciding it was safe enough now to take the risk. Since they'd agreed upon no radio contact, no phone calls, nothing that might be picked up on whatsoever, Reba had to head south blind. She would have no idea how the group fared or even if they'd managed to get away clean until they reached the southern shore. She was certain that she was in for a rather nerve-wracking afternoon. David was pacing nervously back and forth at about that same time, wanting desperately to know how Reba must be doing. He and the other 20 shifters were trying to leave the little farm they'd been using, but suspicious-looking cars were parked next door, leaving them feeling anxious as 3 in the afternoon rolled around. "All right, you guys," he finally said. "For the most part, we should be non-visible to whoever those people are, since you'll mostly be hunkered down inside the back of the vans where you can't be seen. I think we should just load up and get out of here, and then if they do follow us, we'll have to think of a way to lose them along the roadway somewhere. It's make or break time." "David's right," Micah agreed. "The longer we sit here, the more of them are likely to start showing up. They'll capture every last one of us, and you'll all be right back where you started from. 2 at a time, fast-paced, get in and we get out. Boris, are the weapons already aboard?" 2 guns per van, he nodded. "Should we stagger when the vans leave, though? 3 black vans pulling off at once is going to be kind of obvious, don't you think?" "We're running out of time and options," David said. "That boat leaves at 6, whether we're on board or not. We can't afford to miss this window of opportunity. Of course, anyone who's scared to try is welcome to remain behind and get captured for sure." "No, man, we're all with you," Boris protested. "Let's move, people. Get Sylvie and Ilana into the first van out," Micah insisted. "I don't want them anywhere near the rear if things start to get ugly." Sylvie cast Micah a worried look, but she knew better than to say anything. Once he made up his mind about something, it tended to stay made. Besides, she didn't want their daughter anywhere near the action either. She hurried out and got herself and her daughter into a van, and waiting with bated breath until her mate finally joined them. Micah pounded the back of the seat to let the driver know they were all aboard, and soon afterwards the vehicle started to move. Sylvie worried at her bottom lip as they lurched, wondering if they would be followed or caught somehow. "Mama, are we headed for the big boat now?" asked Ilana curiously. "Yes, kitten, only we need to be very quiet along the way," she explained. "Can you be quiet with me? Let's see who can stop talking for the longest." "Okay," Ilana agreed. Sylvie suspected she wasn't likely to say another word all week, assuming they managed to get away in the first place. Ilana was a very literal type of person, and she liked to win. Even at barely 6 weeks of age, that much was already quite apparent. Micah smirked as he watched the pair of them clamping their mouths shut with a determined resolve. He wanted very much to tease them, but he was too sure that if he said anything he'd cause his mate to lose the game, and then he'd never hear the end of it. Instead, he simply sat with the 4 other men in the back half of the van and sat near the back window, periodically glancing out. "Is anyone following us?" asked Boris with a worried frown. "I don't see anyone," Micah replied, "but I hate that you put all of the most important passengers into this van, and instructed the other 2 to make sure we'd get away even if they have to engage in battle. Don't you think that all those men have as much right to be free as we do?" "Micah, how many Liger shifters do you see in the other cars?" Boris pointed out. "It's vital that you and your daughter make it out of here, We're hoping to be able to study her and maybe figure out why you two managed to have her in the first place. I think it's vitally important to know if lion and tiger shifters will ever be able to simply become one group instead of divided types. If the shifters ever hope to break free from humans treating us like some sort of pets, we'll need to be able to work together on that common goal. This group, we're lions and tigers working together. Seeing your daughter has given us hope that what we're fighting for is real. That someday, the shifters will be able to live free from servitude or ostracization from other human-type groups. It's a goal I am willing to die for. We all are. I have always felt that the division between the lions and the tigers was wrong. Micah nodded. But I don't want the deaths of innocent felines on my head. I think we should all get away together. The others would eventually manage to come to us, should they miss the boat now, Boris insisted. But try to be optimistic, Micah. We're not being pursued as yet. Maybe we won't have to concern ourselves with that plan, or what it would mean. Papa, are you saying these men would stop living just to make sure I am safe? Ilana inquired. Why am I so important? You are the only one of your kind. Kitten. Now hush and sleep for now, or I'll tell your mother you're cheating. Yes, sir. She agreed and immediately settled into a sleeping position, not moving another muscle so he wouldn't tell. Ilana reminded Micah so much of her mother already. Headstrong, beautiful, proud. He was certain she was special. That what they were doing now to keep her safe, it was very important. It was like Boris said. Ilana was a symbol that all the cats could look to. She existed, and because she did, they knew that they could come together, that they could be strong enough to overcome everything that the collectors and their rich clients might throw their way. It was no great surprise to anyone that the threat they expected to face wasn't following from behind, but rather was waiting for them as they neared to docks. For large trucks, ranged all across the road to block the way. David, who was driving the van in which Micah and the others were hidden, opened the little window behind his head to tell them what he saw ahead. They pulled their van off to the side of the road and talked for a couple of minutes. Well, unless we can find another way to get past those trucks. The only thing I can think of is to get into the water and swim over to our boat while the other vans distract them. We can't possibly drive down and get past them. We don't have enough muscle to fight our way through. There are other ways, gentlemen, said Reba, who now poked her head out from above. In a tree she'd climbed at some point before their arrival. Good to see you all again, by the way. The other two vans did not slow as they continued up the road. Reba motioned to the others to get up into the trees as well, and they all quickly climbed through them to a more neutral area, away from the abandoned van and the upcoming battle. What do you mean by other ways, love? David wanted to know as they continued along toward the shoreline they could see in the distance beyond the trees. I've enlisted the help of a fishing boat, she smirked. It's all arranged. We're to board our boat from Greece after this little scow sneaks us away. Whether the others manage to catch the boat or not, we're going to be free of Indian shores and able to find a way to go where we had planned. And you still won't tell us where that is? Micah inquired. We're not home free just yet, she replied. We still have to get to the scow. It's possible we'd be seen. We should wait until the battle is in full swing before we make a run for it. And so, the little group remained there among the trees for about 5 minutes more. The sound of bullets echoed through the air. Tires squealed. Trucks' engines revved, and more tires squealed. They had their chance, and they took it. Micah ran with Ilana like she was a prized football, and he was headed for a winning touchdown. We've made it, said Reba with a sigh of relief as she directed the group to quickly slip aboard. Everyone into the hold. We don't know if they will try to check the ships once they discover that none of you are among the others. Captain, can we get underway? We can indeed, agreed a tall, lean, raider-animated man as he slammed the door shut behind the last of them. Stay quiet in there. I'll get you out of here. Not to worry. Ilana was playing quietly on the bridge of the huge ship as it continued on its way across the vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean. This was her second voyage with Captain Edwards, but this one was by far more important than the first had been. Before, the seafaring had been only about getting away from the collectors and finding somewhere to hide until the real journey could begin. Now they were finally on the open sea at last. They had hidden in Egypt for nearly 4 months, so that the once small cub was now reaching her adolescence. Ever a curious cat, she had gotten into plenty of mischief during her formative years, and more than once she'd almost gotten the small group of 20 cats into trouble. Some of the males had found mates among the humans while they were waiting to leave, so now there were 8 aboard including Reba. Others had simply disappeared into the desert, going wherever it was they'd been headed. Sylvie couldn't really say where that was, though. She hadn't bothered to ask, and so she hadn't been able to explain. Right now, however, Ilana was much more curious about the whales. A pair of them had come out of the water, spouting water. Sylvie laughed at her daughter's excited expression, though she was fairly certain she was wearing one as well. It wasn't as though she had actually seen a whale before either. "They're so beautiful, Mama," Ilana insisted, her face split in half by the grin she wore. "When I am done maturing, I want to become a biologist. Do you think there's any way that could ever happen? In a world where people would rather enslave you than understand you?" "No," said Sylvie sadly. "However, every day that you are alive, you're bringing us hope that maybe someday that world won't exist anymore. That there will come a day when you could become a biologist, if that's really what you want to do." "You watch, Mama," said Ilana with determination. "Someday I'll get the humans to see that we have just as much right to live free as they do. Just see if I don't." "I'm sure you will, kitten," she said proudly. Captain Edwards stood watching, a look of wonder upon his handsome face. "She's such an interesting kitty, isn't she?" he said with a wry grin. "I hope I'm there on the day she succeeds. I would love to see it." "Captain? Pirates off the starboard bow," shouted one of the men. "Damn!" Micah gasped. "Those are not pirates, Boris. They look like collectors." "Captain, do you think we'll be able to lose them?" "I doubt it completely," he replied. "I'll have to get your family off this boat. It's the only chance Ilana has of fulfilling her dream. There's no room in one of those lifeboats for all of us," Sylvie insisted. "You must get Ilana out of here. She's the one who must survive." "I thought a captain must always go down with his ship," Boris protested. "Why are you sending her with him?" "Because he's the one who knows the way," said Sylvie, the despair in her voice clear. "He's the only one here who knows how to figure out which way is north, or the directions of the ocean currents, or how to catch food out on the open sea. Isn't that right, sir?" Edward sighed. "I'm afraid she is right," he told Boris. "There's no other man here I could recommend in my stead. Swain, get the lifeboat ready. I'm off on another grand adventure. Come on, kitten, we've got to be quick or those nasty men will catch us, too. I hope you're ready to help me row." "Aye, aye, Captain Edwards," Ilana agreed, giving him a salute. "And you two will be along soon. Right, Mama? Right, Papa?" "We can't promise you that, kitten," Sylvie said with tears in her eyes. "These men aren't going to simply let us go." Ilana's face fell, the sense of adventure turning to a sense of dread. "Then who is going to take care of me? You can't expect this old salt here to watch over me forever." "Hey, I'm not that old," Edwards complained. "Now come on, or we'll lose our window of opportunity, young miss." "I love you both," she told them. "If you can find a way, you know where we intend to be. You must come and find me again." "If I can find a way, you can bet I will," Sylvie sobbed. "Now hurry and go. I cannot take much more of this parting." Without another word, Ilana turned and followed the captain as he headed for the little lifeboat. The men had already lowered it into position above the water. He helped Ilana get in and followed as well. One of the men tossed in several canteens and a bag of food. "If you get away, you know where we're going," Edward said with a nod. "Do your worst, won't you, to stop those collectors from heading our way?" "We'll try, sir," his man agreed. The boat dropped down swiftly, striking on the waves. The two of them began to paddle madly, moving as quickly as possible while the boat blocked their pursuers from spotting them as they got away. "We'll be long gone before they know we've taken to the sea," Ilana said cheerfully, rowing with the strength of 10 men. "Set down your oars for now, sir. I can do this better if I work alone." "You never cease to amaze me, Ilana," he said as he laid his oars aside. "You are the most fascinating creature I've ever seen." "This will be your new home, Sylvie and Micah," said Dr. Odell kindly, as she brought them to a little hut situated on the edge of the preserve. "I can't tell you how glad I was to buy your freedom from those collectors when I saw you were among their number. It's very lucky for us that they didn't know about your daughter, but were only interested in gathering up all the males." "Yes, it was for the best that we sent her away," Sylvie said, though there was a sadness to her tone that said she wished she had done otherwise. "Don't worry, Sylvie dear," said the doctor. "Every effort will be made to find Ilana by our new research company, because although you've agreed to have more children as part of the new program, I know how much you want your first child returned to you. And you found 4 other couples willing to get in on this little experiment too?" asked Micah incredulously. "Who would have ever thought you'd convince Leona to pair with a tiger for the express purpose of seeing what type of cubs they'd have?" "Yes, that was a bit of a shock," Sylvie agreed. "It's going to be a bit of a pain, having her around in our little group, but I suppose it can't be helped. I think you'll be pleased to learn that Nathan has tamed her quite a bit during the last 2 months since she was selected. Even I don't see much left of the arrogant lioness you once knew." "I'll believe that when I see it," Sylvie scoffed. "Here they come now," Dr. Odell chuckled. "Wait till you see. It's so disgusting." In their human forms, golden-haired Leona was walking hand in hand with a tall, handsome man with red hair. The pair seemed to have perpetual smiles painted on their faces, and they were dressed like they were on their way to a tennis tournament rather than a simple walk. "Oh no, my darling, I simply must insist," Leona was saying. "You've got to pick out the colors for the nursery. It would only be fair after I chose the paint for the rest of the house." "House?" Micah asked curiously when he heard her say that. "They're making us all actual houses," Nathan explained. "I guess they're planning to start some sort of breeding program if all goes well." "Oh, really?" asked Sylvie. "But wouldn't any sons we birth be sterile?" "In tigers and lions, yes," Leona said with a nod. "However, it remains to be seen if shifters would encounter the same trouble. In any case, I'm going to be the mother of the very first Tigan shifter. Who would have thought that you and I would find ourselves in a situation like this?" Sylvie frowned. "You aren't still hoping for a go at Micah, are you?" she asked suspiciously. "No way," Leona said. "Nathan has shown me that there's much more to life than petty jealousies and being the best-dressed person and all those other catty little things I've done my entire life. I can't imagine myself with any mate but him." "I know just what you mean," Sylvie said with a little smile as she peeked at Micah out of the side of her eye. "There's nothing better in life than finding the male who holds every part of your heart in his paws. Except maybe placing your paw in his," said Micah with a smile as he stretched out a hand to his mate. "Shall we have a look at our new home, kitten?" "Yes," Sylvie said. "We shall." The end.